A man who had never been in love before suddenly had a 5-year-old daughter, but he never felt surprised. Instead, to this character, whose appearance would change the entire plot. She was never supposed to be the protagonist of this manga. So at home, he never looked his daughter in the eye, and the servants also began to treat the child as if she were invisible, to the point that even having a full meal became a luxury for her. Although she was a pitiful little girl loved by no one, she would always quietly lean against the wall, carefully observing every move her father made, hoping that one day he would notice her existence. Until one day, when she was tripped by a book on the floor of the study. She finally found in that book the answer to why she was so unwanted. It turned out that it said she would soon die of illness, and that her father would soon adopt a new daughter, and by that time, she would already have passed away, while that girl instead would receive all of her father's boundless affection. And after growing up, she would also have a perfect marriage with the Marquis's son. But her own name had become known by everyone as that of a villainess. Seeing this, the girl was utterly confused. She felt that all she had left now was her health. This definitely wasn't talking about her. But on second thought, if things really were as the book said, instead of staying here unloved, she might as well use the little time she had left to live as she pleased and do whatever she wanted. So she stopped sneaking around and instead appeared openly in front of the man. But the man used peeking at the book as an excuse, and not only burned that book on the spot, but also punished her by making her give him a hug every day. It turned out that the man did not dislike this daughter at all. It was just that her appearance made him feel a little overwhelmed by the sudden blessing, because the man was from the demon race, and the girl's mother did not originally belong to this world either. Many years ago, monsters ran rampant in the human world, and an unknown barrier appeared, completely separating humans from demons. But in order to meet his beloved, he personally opened a passage connecting the two worlds, and because of this, the man was called the Monster Duke in the human world. The people around him began to look at him strangely, partly out of fear, and partly because they were drawn to his handsome appearance. But the man had never wanted his wife to bear the stigma of being associated with a monster together with him. So when the man first met his daughter, he acted extremely cold in front of outsiders, and even instructed the servants that as long as this little one did not die, that was enough. It was precisely because he did not want his biological daughter's name to be linked with a monster. But the girl had only accidentally stepped onto her mother's magic teleportation circle, which brought her here to meet the father her mother had spoken of. But from now on, during the little time she had left to live, the girl wanted to find the answer to why she would die soon, and also stop her father from letting some other girl take away his love. This demon duke had actually had his face scratched by a child he had just picked up. But not only did he not hurt her, he even declared this child to be his most amazing daughter. Her name was Lofi. After learning of her bizarre background from the book, and going to find her father openly, she was brought to the dining room. Lofi sat in the chair, looking at the table full of lavish food, and finally she could eat a full meal. She tried hard to cut the chewy steak, but as expected, she was still too small, and did not even have the strength to cut a piece of meat. Now, this cold father was sitting right beside her. If no one had been around as usual, she would have just grabbed it with her hands and eaten it. Lofi picked up the knife again, trying to find a posture that would make cutting the meat easier. Suddenly, the table knife flew into the air. Oh no, the knife flew out. There was no time to waste. She had to catch it quickly. When Dad raised his hand to wipe the blood from his face, Lofi showed a shocked expression. The table knife had actually sliced straight across Dad's handsome face, yet he did not make a sound. But at this moment, if nothing unexpected happened, something unexpected was about to happen to Lofi. The stool she was sitting on suddenly slipped, and she ended up falling right into Dad's arms. What is this? It's soft. I think I recognize this embrace. But when she discovered that the father holding her had blood flowing down his face, Lofi quickly got down and apologized. I'm sorry, Dad. I was the one who hurt you. However, Dad said something in an icy tone, and Lofi thought Dad must be angry. The next second, a large hand reached over, and unexpectedly Dad stroked Lofi's little head and said gently, "Daughter, I'm fine. Instead, you almost fell to the floor, and I was really worried about you." It sounded very warm, but a memory flashed through Lofi's mind. She remembered that when she felt unwell, her mother would first stay with her and then cast a healing spell. So Lofi looked at the father in front of her and stretched out her little hand. "Don't hurt. Bala Bala, little magic fairy. Transform, transform, transform." And together with the chant, there was actually no reaction at all on Dad's face. A trace of disappointment passed through Lofi's heart, but her little hand was gently held by Dad and placed on his own face. Dad doesn't hurt. The magic worked really well. Lofi immediately showed a happy expression. And just like that, Lofi's first meal together with Dad turned into a massive socially embarrassing scene. But next, the Duke cut the steak for Lofi, and she chewed bite after bite, only to notice that Dad had not eaten a single bite. At this moment, Lofi questioned why Dad was not eating, saying that she was growing now, and if he didn't behave, he would get scolded. And with a curious look, The Duke wanted to know who would dare scold him, and Luffy immediately said righteously that of course it would be his daughter, Luffy. Hearing this, Dad somewhat embarrassedly lowered his head in silence. Yes, it was all because he had such an amazing daughter. However, when night came, the Duke was suddenly startled in the corridor because he saw that Luffy seemed to be sleepwalking. It was already deep into the night. Where had that little one Luffy run off to? Just as he said this, Dad was startled by a figure in the dark corridor. It was actually Luffy standing there with her eyes wide open, completely unconscious of what she was doing. Then the next second, Luffy staggered a step and actually pitched straight toward the floor headfirst. Dad quickly dropped to one knee and pulled her into his arms. What happened to the little one? Was this sleepwalking? So, in the days that followed, Dad would always take up a bedsheet in the middle of the night and play blanket games with Luffy. And only after watching Luffy fall asleep would he leave in peace. But as time passed, Luffy grew into a lovely little princess, and every time Dad returned after finishing his work, Luffy would always leap straight into the Duke's arms. Dad came back so early today, did you miss me? Thinking back to when he had first met this little one, the Duke's deliberate acts of neglecting her made it impossible for him now to let go of it, and he believed that after doing those things, he surely could not obtain Luffy's forgiveness. But fortunately now, Luffy did not take those things to heart. Actually, even now Luffy did not know whether what she was doing was right or not, because she always felt that Dad disliked her. So now she had to work hard to do things that would make Dad happy, while the Duke too gradually began to reflect on himself. He picked up Luffy and asked her, "You ran so fast. What if I hadn't caught you?" But Luffy did not care at all, and felt that if Dad couldn't catch her, then he would have to take responsibility. Otherwise, she would keep crying until the whole empire knew that he was bullying her. Looking at Luffy's mischievous appearance, the Duke decided from the bottom of his heart that this darling in front of him was someone he would protect for the rest of his life. But when he thought about how his daughter would grow up in the future, he felt that he could not keep her shut inside the ducal residence forever. By then, she would probably become like her mother, like a little bird imprisoned in a cage. So he decided to let Veronica become Luffy's personal guard. Do not underestimate her. Although she was currently acting in the role of a servant, she, like the Duke, also came from the demon realm and was the Duke's only confidant. Only when she stayed by Luffy's side would she reveal a kind and innocent side. However, Luffy also realized this, and she began trying to build a good relationship with Veronica. They told stories together, and Veronica held her as they went out for walks together, until one day, the servants actually began gossiping about them behind their backs. I heard that the Duke's trusted aide actually went to take care of that picked-up child. It's really ridiculous. Unexpectedly, Luffy happened to hear it just then. At that moment, Luffy quickly asked Veronica to put her down. The next second, she appeared in front of the servants, angrily questioning what they were talking about, and saying that since it made them so happy, they might as well let her hear it too. Yet the servants actually looked disdainful, thinking that the Luffy before them was just a useless good-for-nothing. They then said they had said nothing, little miss, but Luffy asked them again in an extremely cold tone. She had already heard it just now, so why were they still trying to deny it? It's fine, go on. At this moment, Luffy thought to herself that during this period, she really had received a lot of care from the Duke and Veronica, and her confidence within the family had risen quite a bit. But the one thing she could least tolerate being questioned about was that her father was Duke Dad. So Luffy decided to teach them a lesson. The next second, she angrily warned them, "Why have you all gone mute? The Duke has already acknowledged that I am his daughter and kept me here. Are you now saying that Lord Duke means nothing in your eyes?" As soon as these words came out, the servants were instantly stunned and immediately knelt on the spot and said, "That is not what we meant. We misspoke just now. Please forgive us, Mississippi." But this was the first time Luffy had ever been so angry, and in her nervousness, she felt a bit frightened afterward. So she turned and told them not to think that just because she was a child, they could gossip behind her back. Her father was waiting for her now, so she would let today's matter go. But if she heard it again in the future, she would definitely make Dad kill them. His daughter was his everything. The Duke demonstrated with sheer financial power what it meant to be a qualified father. What does it mean to be a qualified father? Not only did he take his daughter and buy every piece of clothing in the fabric shop, he also let his daughter sleep in his arms for the first time. At that time, the Duke carefully carried Luffy back home, and in order to keep Veronica from waking her, he even deliberately made a shushing gesture after laying her on the bed with a "good night, daughter." Only then did the Duke walk out of the room, and it was at that very moment that Luffy felt the Duke's love for her for the first time. Although she might still have been in a dream now, she could still vaguely feel that Duke Dad loved her. But after learning from the butler that before going out, Luffy had been gossiped about by the servants, he decided that since rumors had caused the trouble, then he would make the rumors even fiercer. So he ordered the butler to pass down the command that starting tomorrow, everyone in the Empire must know that the Duke had once had a wife who had been hidden away and died young, and that she had also given birth to a daughter hidden in the residence. As a result, after the news spread, the older brother Bihan, who had always lived in another palace, immediately received the news. At this moment, He wore a puzzled expression and was so shocked by the news that he was somewhat at a loss. How could it be that Damien actually had a new daughter? So the next day, when Lofi woke up, she learned from Veronica that a special guest had arrived at the residence today. At this moment, Lofi pressed Veronica about who had come, and Veronica immediately became nervous upon hearing it, saying that it might be the young lady's older brother. Lofi was instantly shocked. She had an older brother now. She pushed open the door and was about to go take a look. Who could have expected that the gloomy look in the boy's eyes before her would instantly give Lofi a bad feeling? Wasn't it that in the book the Duke only adopted a daughter? Then where did this boy come from? Filled with questions, Lofi was unable to face this guest for a moment and turned around and ran back to her room. By nighttime, Lofi sank into endless gloom because Duke Dad had not come to see her today either. She felt that now that the son had come back, Dad no longer wanted her as his daughter, right? It was too depressing. So she comforted herself that after sleeping, her mood would be better tomorrow. But the next day, Lofi actually cried until she looked like a little bun. She simply could not accept that she suddenly had an older brother and thought that the Veronica before her must also have a very good relationship with him. She was about to turn back into that poor little thing no one wanted again. But Lofi planned to go out and ease this terrible mood. Who would have thought that as soon as she went out, she ran into Brother Bihan. Lofi immediately became nervous, turned her head, and wanted to return to her room. But just then Bihan actually started playing with her hair. Lofi was instantly angered and immediately slapped away her brother's little hand, questioning why he was touching her hair. And Bihan said that father had always liked children with white hair and blue eyes, and since she had neither of those, how could she still stay here? As soon as Lofi heard this, she impatiently told him that she was father's daughter, and no matter what she looked like, father would like her. Brother immediately fell into confusion, unable to understand what part of this child in front of him was better than him, and why father would adopt this little girl. However, something unexpected happened. Lofi had intended to turn around and leave the room, but suddenly came back, raised her hand and pointed at him, and warned him sharply that he was not allowed to say such nonsense about her again in the future. Otherwise, she would definitely make Dad teach him a lesson. As for why she was here, she did not need any reason at all. On the contrary, why were you here? But brother said that father had of course valued his abilities, and that naturally made him the Duke's son as well. It turned out that he had previously been a page by the Duke's side, and because the demon race rarely had descendants, and because he had always performed excellently after being noticed by the Duke, he was granted magic power, and from then on remained in the demon realm handling affairs for the Duke. And as time passed, he and the Duke came to address each other as father and son. But Lofi angrily turned around and left the palace. While at that moment brother stood upstairs staring blankly at her, thinking to himself that a girl was still just a girl. After hearing a few words, was she really going to run away from home? However, Lofi only wanted to go out and clear her mind. But unexpectedly, at that very moment, heavy rain started falling from the sky. At this time, Lofi hurriedly hid in the bushes in the garden, while brother looked at this suddenly changed, ghostly weather, thinking that that little girl would probably be soaked through before long. But what did that have to do with him? Thinking that, he unconsciously lay down on the bed and fell asleep. Unexpectedly, Lofi remained out in the rain until evening, but after waking up, he actually discovered that the heavy rain had still not stopped, and his heart immediately skipped a beat. Could it be that something had really happened to that girl? Thinking of this, he immediately got up and rushed outside. And sure enough, the situation of Lofi, who was still getting drenched in the rain, was not looking good, with one sneeze after another, unable to stop at all. Just as she dazedly wondered whether she was about to die here, suddenly, a voice sounded by her ear. "So this is where you were." At this moment, Lofi looked up and saw that it really was her brother, Bihan. At that moment, her brother tossed her the clothes he had brought in advance and said that if she really died here, their father would probably blame him. However, Lofi was somewhat at a loss because of this action. She felt a little awkward, but then accidentally noticed that her brother's body had also already been soaked by the rain. That miserable looking back figure instead made Lofi feel a trace of goodwill toward him. She immediately questioned him, "Do you actually not hate me?" Unexpectedly, her brother directly denied it. "I hate you very much. Don't flatter yourself." The icy words instantly shattered Lofi's illusion. He really did still hate me. At this moment, Veronica appeared with a worried expression. She reminded Lofi that she must remember to check the weather before going out in the future. But how could Lofi's mind still be on that? At this moment, only the two words hate remained in her mind. However, that night, Lofi sleepwalked again. And when she woke up, she was already standing in the dark corridor. But her fear was interrupted by a voice. What exactly is going on with that child? The familiar voice made Lofi immediately realize that it was her brother, Bihan. At this moment, Lofi cautiously hid to the side and eavesdropped, but the words that followed left her frozen on the spot. "Father, are you still not done playing your family game? There are already enough people in the old house now." At that moment, her mood felt as if it had fallen into a bottomless abyss. So everything really was fake after all. Sure enough, the whole family hated her. Lofi immediately turned around and ran wildly toward downstairs. Just then, A large hand blocked her path. It was her father, staring at her blankly. "Daughter, what's wrong?" Although her father appeared in time, Lofi's heart had already turned to ashes, and she cried like a tearful little child. "Dad, didn't you say that I'm your daughter? Then why are you treating me like some kind of game?" Her father was instantly startled and immediately realized that his daughter had overheard the conversation between him and Bihan. And at that very moment, he decided to clear up all the misunderstandings between himself and his daughter. He then pulled Lofi into his arms. He told her that she did not need to care about Bihan's appearance at all. He was merely one of his attendants. At this moment, Lofi was instantly stunned. So the reason the Duke treated Bihan as a son was only to maintain the relationship between the family and the royal family, because the demon race had always had very few descendants. If no one inherited the family line, the family would belong to the royal family. But even so, how could Lofi possibly not care? When she thought about having to live under the same roof as Bihan, she still could not monopolize her father's love after all. Unexpectedly, the next day, Lofi happily went to open the door for Veronica, only to discover that the person who came was actually her brother, Bihan. And he politely asked, "May I come in?" Lofi was full of confusion because of this behavior. After she nodded, Bihan sat down beside her. Unexpectedly, her brother sincerely bowed in front of her and apologized. He said that what he said yesterday had been a bit excessive, and he hoped she would not take it to heart. Lofi was stunned again. This was the first time she had ever received someone else's apology. But then Bihan told her that he would be leaving tomorrow. Lofi quickly asked, "Didn't you just arrive? Why are you leaving already?" But Bihan said that it was the Duke who had told him to go back. Now that the Duke had a daughter, he no longer needed him anymore. Lofi could not believe this news. She felt that the Duke was actually going to drive her brother away for her sake. So how could she possibly feel at ease about it? But Bihan kept saying that his appearance had made the young lady uncomfortable and that he would never come to the empire again in the future. Lofi instantly stood up. Without thinking, Lofi grabbed his little hand. "Stay and be my brother." But when Bihan heard this, his eyes widened. After thinking it over for a moment, he felt that being a brother did not seem impossible after all. And when Lofi saw that he still had not answered, she seemed to become a little disappointed, so she asked again, "Don't you want to be Lofi's brother?" However, Bihan said that it was not that he did not want to, but that in the end, he was only an adopted son. But Lofi did not care at all. She felt that everyone had already long regarded you as the Duke's son. Unexpectedly, at this moment Bihan, because of Lofi's attempt to make him stay, came to see her differently. He felt that he had clearly rejected her so much before, yet now she was still willing to accept him. So, in the next second, her brother bent down in front of Lofi, and his little head gently rested against his younger sister's forehead. From now on, perhaps he too could feel what it was like to have a family. At this moment, Lofi once again froze in place. Lofi then learned that Bihan had still returned to the demon world. She hurriedly went to find her father and ask him why. But her father said that he needed to go back and handle affairs. Wouldn't it be good enough for his daughter to have only her father's love? But Lofi immediately became dejected. She thought, we had clearly already agreed on it, so why did he still go back? Just then, a magical aura suddenly appeared in the room, and Lofi was immediately startled. She quickly hid behind the sofa. Unexpectedly, that magical aura actually began to speak to her, and it said that it knew Bihan. This made Lofi curious about it, and only after talking with it did she learn that it was actually her brother's pet spirit. It could not only convey emotions, but also play with her. At this moment, Lofi had a sudden idea. She conveyed to the spirit the joy in her heart from when Bihan agreed yesterday to be her brother, together with the thoughts in her heart. Unexpectedly, Bihan, who was in the demon world, really received it and was overjoyed. As a result, the next day, while Lofi was playing hide and seek with Veronica, she suddenly discovered Bihan, who had rushed over from the demon world. In the bushes, Lofi asked in surprise, "Why are you here? Didn't Dad say you had gone back?" It turned out that when he went back earlier, he had only gone to hand over his affairs to someone else. Now that he had returned, he was truly and genuinely here to be Lofi's brother. Unexpectedly, after learning all this, Lofi instead became unhappy again. She felt that Bihan had actually kept it from her together with Dad, but with a brother who could use magic and was handsome. How could Lofi possibly dislike that? This Dad really was too mean. Lofi took Bihan by the hand and walked toward the house. Bihan asked Lofi why she had come to the garden alone, and only then did Lofi remember that she had just been playing hide and seek with Veronica. She leaned close to Bihan's ear and whispered a secret, saying that she could not find Veronica and wanted to take a shortcut by having Bihan use magic to find her. After hearing Lofi's suggestion, Bihan could not help but burst out laughing. "My little sister is just too cute. Although it's a pity I can't do that because I can't use magic here." It was only later, after asking Veronica, that the puzzled Lofi learned why Bihan could not use magic. Because of that barrier, the power of the demon race in the human world would be weakened by half, or even disappear completely. The so-called barrier separates the demon world from the human world. In ancient times, demons and magical beasts once came to the places where humans lived, and because of that, this place turned into hell. After the barrier appeared, they disappeared. The demon race created an entrance connecting the two worlds. That entrance lies within the jurisdiction of the Prodim family. Just how much does an older brother dote on his younger sister? Luffy truly experienced it. Ever since Bihan came back, he had gone to play with Luffy almost every day. Whenever something happy happened, he would share it with Luffy as well. And whenever there was something delicious to eat or drink, he would always remember Luffy and bring an extra portion for her. The brother and sister got along extremely well. If only I had a brother like that too. That day, Damien ended the meeting very early because he really wanted to hurry back and see that adorable daughter. The people below all noticed it. This duke had been ending meetings earlier and earlier lately. After returning home, Damien was leaning by the window, looking into the garden. He saw Luffy swinging alone, and seeing how lonely she looked, Damien's heart was full of self-blame. Recently, he had spent too much time on work and had not properly kept his daughter company at all. He hesitated over whether he should first put down his work and go keep Luffy company. Meanwhile, Veronica, Luffy's personal maid, cried out in surprise, "Miss, you're so cute." It turned out that Luffy was wearing a new outfit today, the one she had bought last time when she went shopping with Damien. Sure enough, Luffy looked good in anything. At this moment, Bihan also happened to come over to play with Luffy. Looking at the newly added swing in the garden, he was curious. There had never been these things here before, and it turned out they had all been specially prepared for Luffy. The three sat around the small table in the garden and chatted about how each of them had come to the Duke's residence. Luffy fell asleep sitting on the swing chair. When she opened her eyes and woke up, Dad Damien was actually kneeling on one knee in front of her. Luffy, Bihan, and Veronica sat together, talking about their interesting stories. The last time she went shopping with Damien, she had eaten a kind of delicious food, but she did not know exactly what it was or what it was called. All he remembered was that the moment it went into his mouth, he went siha, and it was sweet. Thinking of that, Luffy couldn't help reenacting the gesture and expression from back then, so what she had meant was that cool, icy feeling. Veronica understood it at a glance and could not help laughing. "Miss, you're really too adorable. Since you like it so much, I'll go tell the kitchen to make it right away." Bihan also rushed to say that he would go, but Veronica had already stood up, so she told Bihan to just stay seated. The way the two of them politely deferred to each other, with somewhat restrained gestures, made Luffy a little curious. After asking, she learned that Veronica had actually come to the Duke's residence even earlier than Bihan. Although Bihan was nominally the young master, in terms of seniority, he still had to call Veronica his senior. No wonder the two of them had been so polite just now. Luffy also generously said that she had simply arrived at the Duke's residence with a bang, which made Bihan let out an honest, goofy laugh. As for Bihan, the reason he came to the Duke's residence was for one person, a benefactor who had once saved him. He came to the Duke's residence in order to find her. Staying by Damien's side and becoming his confidant was nothing more than a way to obtain more news about that benefactor. Yet even now he still had not found her. But it was also because of that benefactor that Bihan met such a good master, and now he even had a family. And a younger sister as well. At this moment, Veronica came over carrying dessert. The whole plate was full of ice cream, truly enough to whet one's appetite. Luffy picked up the spoon and fed the ice cream into her mouth one bite at a time. The way she looked made her seem truly happy and satisfied as she ate, accompanied by the warm sunlight. After eating and drinking her fill, she began to feel sleepy. Luffy pointed at the swing and said that she wanted to go lean there and rest for a while. No wonder, Luffy had been running and jumping around all morning and had not taken a nap. Bihan and Veronica sat there waiting for Luffy to wake up. Damien knelt on one knee in front of Luffy. He had just wanted to reach out and carry Luffy back to her room when Luffy suddenly woke up, leaving him so embarrassed that he froze in place. When Luffy wondered why he had appeared here, Damien pointed at the window behind him and said, "I saw my daughter asleep from the office doorway, so I came down to take a look." After hearing Damien's answer, Luffy was a bit speechless. Why wouldn't he answer my question directly? Wasn't Damien supposed to be having meetings and doing office work? How could he be appearing here so leisurely at this hour? The usually cold Damien actually lowered himself enough to let Luffy sit on his shoulders, and the faint smile at the corner of his mouth completely changed his usual icy demeanor. Luffy was also very surprised by Damien's appearance. At this time, he should clearly have been in meetings and handling work, so how had he appeared here? Seeing Luffy's expression, Veronica had already guessed what she wanted to say next, and hurriedly waved her hands, saying that she definitely had not called Lord Damien over. Damien, meanwhile, said that he had just happened to see his daughter asleep by the window, and came down wanting to carry her back to her room to rest. This was already the best explanation the proud Damien could give. After all, no matter how one looked at it, he could not possibly say something so tender and mushy, like that he had missed his daughter too much, and had therefore hurried over anxiously. However, Lofi was not convinced by Damien's explanation and asked whether what he meant was that the Duke's work was actually not busy at all and that he was so leisurely he could come play whenever he wanted and leave whenever he wanted. Don't be fooled by how fluent Lofi sounded when she spoke. Such sacred and serious work was actually brushed aside by her with a single casual sentence. Damien explained somewhat awkwardly that he was a very busy man of the Empire. So how could it possibly be, as she said? Seeing that the Duke looked too embarrassed to admit that he had actually just missed Lofi too much and had therefore come early, the butler could only step forward and explain that although His Grace the Duke was very busy, he still wanted very much to spend more time with her, so he had specially put down his work to come find her. After hearing this, a mischievous idea suddenly popped into Lofi's mind. She wanted to tease Damien properly. Lofi stepped forward and grabbed Damien's sleeve as she said, "Before, because Dad was too busy, he had no time to play with me. Now, as long as you accompany Lofi for a walk in the courtyard, that will be enough. Will that really do?" After saying that, Damien scooped Lofi up and let her sit on his shoulders. This kind of favoritism and doting probably belonged to Lofi alone. No matter what happened today, he had to take back first place in Lofi's heart. Even the air seemed to be filled with a contest over who is #1 in Lofi's heart. Bihan was the first to pick a rose, preparing to give it to Lofi. Since Lord Damien could lift Lofi up, then he could of course also give her a rose and curry a little favor with her. This time Damien felt a little guilty. After all, every rose in this garden belonged to him, and logically they should not be picked or used to please Lofi. But Lofi did not care about any of that. Since someone is giving it to me, then of course I'm going to accept it. She reached out and took the rose. Then she tucked the flower by her ear, as if deliberately doing it for Damien to see. At this moment, Veronica beside them also came over. Seeing how enthusiastically everyone was doting on Lofi, she felt that she could not do nothing either. So she immediately said that she would prepare a birthday celebration for Lofi and hold a lively and fun birthday banquet. But when exactly was Lofi's birthday? Even Lofi herself did not know the exact date of her birthday. She only remembered that on the day before her birthday, her mother would always wish her happy birthday in advance. And on the very day her mother finished celebrating her birthday for her, she was transported to the Duke's residence. After hearing this, Damien raised his head and said to Lofi, "This year's birthday will definitely become Lofi's most beautiful memory, and you must spend it happily." Lofi has a very kind heart, and although she is human, in the late spring season, she still treated Veronica, who was of the demon race, as her own family. There was still some time before Lofi's birthday, yet Veronica had already asked early on what gift she wanted, hoping to prepare the surprise in advance. After all, this was the first time she would celebrate Lofi's birthday. She treated Lofi like a young master and took care of her wholeheartedly. And all of this was merely what Veronica herself felt to be natural. She did not yet realize that, compared with the person she used to be in the demon race, she had already been quietly changing. When Lofi was asked what birthday gift she wanted, she herself could not say. After thinking it over, in the Duke's residence, she had no worries about food or clothing. There were people who loved her and people who cherished her. She truly lacked no gift and could not think of what she really wanted. In the past, whenever she celebrated her birthday, it was always her mother by her side. The gift itself was not important. As long as someone was with her, she was already very satisfied. Lofi did not want Veronica to tire herself out preparing a gift for her, so she directly said that as long as you stay by my side, that would already be enough. Like family. In Lofi's eyes, this had originally only been a completely natural thing to say. But those words pierced Veronica's heart at once. Although she was of the demon race, she had also grown up in a rare wealthy family in the demon world. That kind of life was subtle, but that did not mean it was a peaceful family. The family was full of hidden murderous intent, and with the slightest carelessness, one might even lose one's life. Every day, she had to grip the sword in her hand tightly to protect herself and guard against being killed by others in the family. That kind of life of constant fear finally became unbearable for Veronica. So she chose to leave. Because in the eyes of the so-called family of the demon race, kinship was simply not worth mentioning. But after meeting Lofi, this definition began to change little by little. Lofi would always show concern for her from time to time. When it rained, she would even worry about whether Veronica would get soaked, just like how she would seriously remind her not to go out yet. And just like Lofi's feelings, which were completely unconditional and held nothing back, that feeling was like warm sunlight, shining little by little into Veronica's heart. Today is Lofi's birthday, and before anyone realized it, this year had already changed so much. It's all in the past now, right? Those maids who used to bully Lofi and speak ill of her behind her back had long since been driven out of the Duke's residence. At first, no one paid attention to Lofi, but now she had become everyone's darling in the whole residence. These days, the person whose words carried the most weight in the entire Duke's residence was probably Lofi. Damien himself did not celebrate birthdays and did not like lively occasions. But when it came to Lofi, everything changed in the blink of an eye. Not only did he have to celebrate his daughter's birthday, he also had to make it grand and bustling. Knowing that Lofi liked flowers, would you not like them? Because his daughter liked flowers, he did not even hesitate, in the cold weather, to build an indoor garden for Luffy just to make her happy. Looking at the magnificent scene before her, Luffy was more or less shocked. If she had known earlier that the gift would be exaggerated to this extent, Luffy probably would not have wanted it in the first place. And Bihan, as her brother, was also absolutely unwilling to lose. Happy birthday, Luffy. After saying that, he gently kissed his little sister on the cheek. Then, he took out an enormous teddy bear from behind him. From the smile on Luffy's face, it was obvious that she truly liked this gift. Veronica, whom Luffy regarded as family, also took advantage of the time before Luffy had woken up to come early to her bedside and offer the first birthday blessing. After spending this year with Luffy, everyone had already come to like her. However, can a scene that seems so cute and warm really continue to go this smoothly forever? Do you still remember when the last spring outing was? Luffy walked in front, holding a large bouquet of freshly picked flowers in her arms. Bihan, following behind her, kept glancing around, clearly absent-minded, as if he had sensed some hidden danger nearby. Just as Luffy turned around, preparing to call Bihan to head back together, the suddenly approaching danger from behind made Bihan's expression change instantly. He suddenly reached out and pushed Luffy away. He let that monster descend from the sky and pounce toward himself. This was the duty of an older brother. Even at the cost of his life, he had to stand in front of Luffy. The group that had come out for the spring outing had originally been sitting together happily. Luffy said that she wanted to pick some flowers to make Veronica a flower crown to wear on her head. Because Damien had already worn a flower crown woven by Luffy's own hands, at this moment, he was not quite so jealous anymore. He was only worried that Luffy would get lost. So he took Luffy's hand and said that he wanted to go along as well. But Luffy was a bit stubborn and seriously said that she did not need an adult to accompany her at all. Fortunately, Bihan came over at that moment, so he went along with Luffy. Luffy, walking in front, was like a little horse freed from its reins, running freely across the flower-filled meadow. But just as the two of them had gathered a full armful of flowers and were preparing to head back, a magical beast suddenly appeared, and its huge claw came straight at Bihan. How could such a gigantic magical beast suddenly appear in the forest?
Bihan, watch out.
The suddenly appearing beast had already launched its attack. Although Bihan raised his hand and blocked the fatal blow, the situation was still far from optimistic. The beast's claws were actually coated with deadly poison, and Bihan could already feel the toxin seeping into his blood. Fortunately, the venom still needed a little time to spread. To protect his younger sister, he had to get rid of this beast as quickly as possible. Bihan immediately struck the beast with all his strength. The beast fell to the ground with a thud, and the first battle was over. Are you okay? I was really so scared just now that something would happen to you, brother. You nearly scared me to death. Hearing how much his sister cared about him, Bihan shyly raised a hand and said, "We need to hurry back. It's too dangerous here." But just as he finished speaking, "Get behind me, now." A sinister premonition approached Luffy once again. Bihan immediately pulled Luffy tightly behind him. Another even larger beast suddenly sprang out in front of them. What should he do? This time, they probably could not escape, and he was already injured. Before Bihan even had time to react, the beast had already opened its bloody maw and lunged straight at him. Bihan quickly leaped backward and avoided the attack, but the wound on his left hand was growing more and more serious, and blood kept dripping down. He knew he could not hold on much longer, so he hurriedly told Luffy to go back and find their father. At least for now. He could still buy some time and let Luffy escape safely first. Luffy knew that she could not help right now, but she also could not just stand by and watch Bihan fall. So she turned around and ran off. Listening to Luffy's footsteps growing farther away, Bihan finally felt a little relieved. But why would a beast appear within the Empire? Hadn't a barrier always sealed them away? How could they have come into the human world? It seemed that he would probably have to sacrifice one of his arms if he wanted a chance to survive. Bihan charged forward again and became entangled in combat with the beast. The two sides were evenly matched, and no one knew how long they had been fighting. Just as his strength was giving out, and he was about to collapse, Luffy actually ran back. She was even carrying a huge bundle of branches in her arms. What was she trying to do? Bihan, who was still grappling with the beast, was filled with shock when he saw that Luffy had actually come back. Luffy had not abandoned her brother. She really had run back, carrying a pile of branches. Bihan, still struggling with the beast, looked utterly stunned. "Didn't I tell you to go back and find father? Why did you come back again?" At the very moment the beast opened its fangs and bit down toward Bihan, Luffy stuffed the huge bundle of branches she had brought back straight into the beast's mouth. It turned out she remembered what her brother had said before. A single branch is fragile and will snap with just a light bend. But when many branches are tied together, they become very sturdy. Now, the beast's mouth was firmly jammed shut by those branches. Luffy grabbed Bihan's hand and turned to run in the opposite direction. Who would have thought that the younger sister would also risk her life to protect her brother? "I'm so tired." Just as the two of them were desperately fleeing, because Luffy was, after all, only a human child, she was already completely exhausted and stopped after not running very far. But with the beast about to catch up, this was absolutely not the time to rest. "It's catching up. We can't stop." Although Bihan was injured, he still took on the responsibility of being the older brother. He picked Luffy up and kept running forward, but because of Luffy's extra weight in his arms, Bihan's running speed obviously slowed down. Before long, the beast indeed caught up with them, and what lay before them was actually a cliff. It seemed that this time, there truly was nowhere left to run. Luffy looked at Bihan nervously. "Don't be afraid." Bihan set Luffy down and shielded her behind him. If a human fell from such a height, their life would certainly be in danger. Looking at the height of the cliff, he knew very clearly that a human falling from it would inevitably be seriously harmed. But if he held Luffy and let himself hit the ground first, then she would definitely survive. "Little sister, hold on tight to me." The next second, the beast pounced fiercely at the siblings. Bihan had no choice but to hold Luffy tightly and leap off the cliff. At the exact moment the beast lunged at them, Bihan held his younger sister and jumped off the cliff together with her. The scene changed, and Luffy was lying on the ground with her eyes wide open. Could it be that she was already dead? The next second, however, she suddenly sat upright. So it turned out she had only briefly lost consciousness. She looked around and then realized that this was actually the bottom of the cliff. Luffy was wondering why she was the only one here. Where had her brother Bihan gone? "You're awake." Bihan walked over covered in wounds. In order to protect his younger sister with all his strength, when he jumped off the cliff holding Luffy, he had tried his best to position himself underneath. That was why Luffy had escaped completely unharmed. Looking at the wounds covering Bihan's body, Luffy was filled with guilt. It was all because of her that Bihan had been so badly injured. But Bihan comforted her instead, saying, "These injuries are nothing to me. The poison isn't fatal either. I'll be fine after resting for a few days." Then he could not help but question Luffy again. "Didn't I tell you to go back and find father? It was so dangerous, so why did you come back?" After hearing that, Luffy shouted back at him directly, "If it were you, and I told you to leave, would you abandon me?" Bihan fell silent for a moment after hearing that. If it had been him, of course, he could never have abandoned Luffy. So he quietly apologized to Luffy. "I shouldn't have yelled at you just now. I was just too worried about you. I'm sorry." The siblings were both being considerate of each other in their own way. Just then, it suddenly began to pour rain. Luffy walked to the cave entrance and looked up at the sky. Now that it was raining, they would not be able to leave for the time being. However, the rain had actually come at just the right time. It washed away the scent from Luffy and Bihan's bodies. No matter how keen the beast's sense of smell was, it would not be able to track them here for the moment. So the brother and sister leaned against each other in the cave, quietly waiting for the rain to stop. Luffy softly said to Bihan that if she had not wanted to come out and pick flowers, things would not have turned out like this. Bihan put a hand on Luffy's shoulder and comforted her, saying that no one could have expected beasts to appear in the Empire. This was not her fault. In order to protect his younger sister, after Bihan's arm had been bitten by the beast, the venom had already seeped into his bloodstream. Originally, the poison would not have taken effect so quickly, but the desperate flight for survival just now had caused his body to move violently, which instead accelerated the spread of the toxin. He had just been comforting his younger sister, saying, "Luffy, once the rain stops, we'll look for another way out." But the next second, Bihan's vision suddenly darkened, and he began to feel dizzy. Just as he was about to collapse, Luffy quickly reached out and supported him. The poison had flared up. Looking at Luffy before him, Bihan actually saw 3 overlapping images of her. Luffy reached out and touched Bihan's burning forehead, only then realizing that his fever was already very severe. So all this time, he had only been forcing himself not to collapse. To keep Luffy from worrying, he was still trying to comfort her, saying that this was only temporary and that he would be fine after a while. How could Luffy possibly fail to hear the truth in his words? Tears immediately welled up in her eyes. She could not help at all and could only think helplessly, when would father finally find us? Meanwhile, Damien had already sensed that something was wrong and brought Veronica out to search for Luffy and Bihan. Veronica was the first to notice a pool of blood on the ground. It was black blood glowing faintly, the blood of a beast. Veronica cried out in shock on the spot. Even she had not expected beasts to appear within the Empire. "Do you see any red blood?" Damien said this with a tense expression. What he was most worried about was whether his human daughter had been injured. Although no human blood was found at the scene, that did not mean Luffy and the others were definitely safe. Damien immediately instructed Veronica, "We must move faster and find them." "Yes, Lord Damien." After responding, Veronica immediately cast magic, and hundreds of silver rays instantly appeared around her. Brother is sick, and he has a high fever too. So the younger sister also took on the responsibility of caring for her brother. Luffy remembered that placing a wet towel on the forehead of someone with a fever could reduce the temperature. So she tore off a ribbon from her clothes, intending to use it as a towel. Then she ran outside and soaked the ribbon with water. But when she came back, all she heard was a smack, and the soaking wet ribbon landed directly across Bihan's entire face. Even Bihan was startled by that, and painfully managed to squeeze out a few words. "Luffy, I don't think this is how it's supposed to be. You have to wring it out first. And also, the forehead is above the eyes." After Bihan said that, Luffy finally realized she had done it wrong. After fixing it properly, she stayed by Bihan's side, thinking that this way, if anything happened to her brother, she would notice immediately. At this moment, The half-delirious Bihan began muttering some nonsense. Luffy knew that he was confused from the fever, his mind muddled, which was why he was rambling like this. But this instead aroused her curiosity, and she could not help wanting to know. Since she was obviously not Bihan's biological sister, why he still wanted to protect her so desperately. So she softly asked, "Why are you so good to Luffy, brother?" Bihan answered almost immediately, "Because Luffy is very cute, and you're very young. The way you look at father is different from me. Always so open and justified. Most importantly, you treat me as family, but I have always been alone, thinking every day only about how I should survive. Something like family was an existence I never even dared to dream of. You are my first family member, which is why you are so special. So how could I possibly not cherish my little sister?" After hearing this, Luffy turned away guiltily. She had not expected that Bihan truly treated her with such sincerity, and yet she herself had once secretly doubted him in her heart. Just then, a beast was actually on the top of the cave, staring fixedly at Luffy and Bihan. The next second, it opened its mouth wide and lunged straight at Luffy. "Get behind me!" Bihan, burning with fever, sensed the danger and gathered all his strength to scoop Luffy up and leap out of the attack's range. He protected Luffy tightly behind him, but in the next second, he could no longer hold on and collapsed weakly to the ground. The erosion of the poison, together with a high fever, finally completely crushed the Bihan who had been forcing himself to endure for so long. The beast charged over. At the very moment the beast pounced again, Luffy was already so frightened that she could not move at all. Now, even the only brother who could still protect her had already fallen. At this moment, she was truly in despair. But just then, a magic circle unfolded out of thin air. It turned out that her demon father, Damien, had arrived. With a casual wave of magic, he easily trapped the beast in place. Luffy, with this cry from Damien, Luffy immediately threw herself into his arms. Tears instantly poured out uncontrollably. She cried and complained about why Damien had come so late. When Bihan collapsed, she had been the only one left by his side, and she had been so scared. Listening to his daughter's tearful complaint, Damien's expression grew heavier and heavier, and he only said in a low voice, "Daddy came too late. Bihan, you worked hard too." This apology was probably the only thing that could make Damien feel even a little better. Meanwhile, the trapped beast was killed in a single blow by Veronica, who had rushed over. Luffy still wanted to turn back and look at Veronica, but the scene was simply too bloody. Fearing that it would frighten Luffy, Damien held her tightly in his arms and would not let her turn around to look. At last, the beast attack was temporarily resolved, but this only removed the immediate danger. The real question was why beasts had come from the demon world into the human world. Damien already had plans regarding this. He and Bihan were also discussing this issue, and it seemed necessary to go to the old manor and confirm something. Bihan volunteered, saying that he could leave right now and go investigate immediately. But Damien stopped him. "In my eyes, do you take me for that kind of harsh master? You're still injured. I'll go alone." After saying that, he raised his hand and healed Bihan. After returning, Luffy slept for a while. When she woke up, she gazed at the rain falling outside the window and softly murmured, "Father Damien has gone to the demon world. Over there, is it raining too?" Then she ran off to see her brother again. Bihan was a little puzzled as to why Luffy had suddenly come to see him. Luffy replied directly, "Do I need a reason to see my family?" The words were just that simple and direct. Looking at her brother lying in bed, Luffy softly asked him, "Does your arm still hurt?" Bihan raised his hand and rolled up his sleeve to show her the wound left by the last beast attack. The wound had actually already healed. It seemed that Damien's treatment had truly worked immediately. In contrast, the red swollen bruise on Luffy's face was still painfully visible. At that moment, Bihan took out a delicate bracelet. He personally put it on Luffy's wrist. This gift had actually been prepared long ago, but he had always forgotten to give it to her. The bracelet and the earring Bihan wore by his ear came from the same gemstone. Bihan had cast magic on both of these gems. As long as Luffy thought of Bihan in her heart, Bihan would be able to know Luffy's exact location. And there was another kind of magic on the bracelet that he could not tell Luffy about, because Bihan hoped his younger sister would never have a chance to use that magic, and he also hoped that this bracelet would never break. Meanwhile, at the old residence in the demon world, Damien had already arrived at the old manor and begun investigating the matter of the beasts. He questioned the servants, but did not get any clues. The servants replied that there had never been any record of entry or exit at the barrier entrance, so the beasts should never have been able to appear in the human world, yet it had happened anyway. Just as Damien was still confused, a commotion from outside interrupted his thoughts. The noise outside interrupted him once again. A stranger was using magic and trying to force his way into the old manor. He was Duke Otto of the demon world, known as the eyes and ears of the demon world, and he held the most detailed intelligence in all the demon world. Damien had summoned him precisely to inquire about the beasts, but when Damien voiced his doubts, Otto flatly denied it, saying that he knew nothing about it. The next second, Damien's eyes instantly turned cold. He directly launched an attack spell at him, apparently intending to force him to speak. Otto remained calm and raised a hand to block the attack with magic. "There's no need for you to take your anger out on me." Otto quickly explained that he truly feared that if Damien kept fighting, the one who would suffer in the end would only be himself. "I really don't know how something like this could have happened. There's no way beasts could cross the barrier on their own. Someone must have brought them from the demon world to the human world." After hearing Otto's explanation, Damien had probably already guessed who was behind this. She had a heart sealed in ice, an undying woman, and she was someone detested by the entire demon race. She was Luffy's mother. She was called the Ice, whose snow would never melt. Ever since meeting Damien, everything had changed. That's right, although she gave birth to a daughter, she also lost her life because of it. At this moment, the sleeping Luffy was having an interesting dream. The rain outside had already been falling all night. Luffy dragged her pillow along and sleepily walked out. What was she trying to do? The next second, she arrived in the kitchen. Because she was too short to reach the table, she climbed onto a stool. So it turned out that Luffy was thirsty. She picked up the water jug on the table and drank from it in big gulps. It definitely wouldn't be Veronica. Suddenly, a noise came from outside the door, and Luffy became very curious. It was already so late. So who besides Veronica could still be here? Could it be a thief? To dare come to the Duke's mansion to steal, since I've run into him. How could I just stand by and do nothing? Luffy quietly moved to the corner of the wall and secretly peeked out with her little head. In the darkness, she could already vaguely make out the thief's figure. It was just that she still could not see the face clearly, and after he came closer, even Luffy was startled. Wasn't this Father Damien? Why would he be here? At this time, shouldn't he still be at the old residence in the demon world? It turned out that Damien missed his daughter Luffy too much, so he came back early. Unfortunately, it was already late at night when he returned. He had originally planned to see Luffy the next day, but Luffy happened to come out in the middle of the night for water and ran right into him. So the father and daughter walked back toward the room together, chatting and laughing. A sudden clap of thunder sounded outside, and it startled Luffy so badly that she hugged Damien's leg at once. The scene was so funny that Damien could not help asking, "Is my daughter scared?" Luffy shook her head desperately, saying that of course she was not. She had only been startled suddenly. But Damien could tell that Luffy really was afraid of thunder. She was just too stubborn to admit it. He reached out and scooped her into his arms. "Tonight, sleep in Daddy's room." This was the first time Daddy had ever soothed his daughter to sleep. Damien brought out his ultimate hidden skill and softly hummed a lullaby. Listening to the song, Luffy felt that it sounded a little familiar. It was a melody her mother used to hum. So she asked Damien about the story between him and her mother, treating it as a bedtime story. Maybe after hearing it, she would fall asleep quickly. Damien hesitated for a moment. He did not know where to begin so that it would become a story Luffy would want to hear. Thinking back on the time he had once spent with Luffy's mother, Damien knew that he had actually been very selfish. Luffy's mother had loved Damien deeply, yet Damien had always been wary of her. Luffy's mother could love Damien so much that she did not even care about her own life. But Damien was exactly the opposite. He had not loved Luffy's mother enough to give up the entire world for her. Damien only said vaguely that Luffy's mother had lived very freely, but to him she had been like a disaster. After hearing this, Luffy still did not really understand what he meant. She only knew that in her mother's words, Father had been a very gentle person, and at first she had thought her mother was lying to her. However, after gradually getting to know Damien, Luffy discovered that Father Damien was in fact cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. Damien felt very comforted. He gently patted Luffy to sleep. "Have a good dream." The next day, Luffy slept until broad daylight, and there was even drool hanging from the corner of her mouth. It seemed she had really slept well last night, but when she returned to her own room, she was stunned by the sight before her. Why had the room become so empty? All the furniture had actually disappeared. Only after asking Veronica did she learn that just because she had said last night in Damien's room that she liked big rooms, he had immediately cleared out a large room for Luffy. But this room was way too big. Father really did not know the meaning of moderation. Now that I've moved into the main building, I even feel a little unaccustomed to it. Right after that, Luffy welcomed her first teacher. Compared to ordinary children, Luffy's enthusiasm in class surprised even the teacher. She was also very curious why Luffy was so happy every time she attended class. Luffy truly loved learning. She was cheerful in every lesson, and the teacher felt very gratified watching her. However, whenever some people of the same age saw Luffy, they could not help thinking of their own children. So they suggested to Damien that he let Luffy come to their home to play. The teacher was the mistress of Marquis Silas's household, and the master of the house, Just, was not only Damien's subordinate, but also a close friend with whom he could talk about anything. Thinking that he himself had not visited Just in a long time, Damien agreed. That day, Luffy put on a brand new pink dress, politely greeted the teacher, and thanked her for the invitation. This exquisite mansion gave Luffy an inexplicable sense of familiarity. She kept feeling as if she had seen it somewhere before. After asking her older brother Bihan, who had come along with her, she learned from him that every generation of heirs in the Marquis Silas family hides a different ability. When she heard that the teacher's son was named Joshua, Luffy froze on the spot. So he was the male lead from the book. He had been neglected by his father since childhood because of his poor health, yet he had hidden his magical talent. Thinking of this, Luffy waited eagerly to meet Joshua. But after waiting a long time, she learned that Joshua had hidden himself away. Luffy was a little angry. They had clearly agreed to meet and get to know each other and become friends, but he had hidden away. That clearly meant he did not want to see us. Bihan teased his younger sister from the side, saying he had not expected that such a cute Luffy would also fail to make friends. Luffy shot back at her brother, saying that it seemed Bihan did not have any friends either. Now that Luffy mentioned it, that really did seem to be true. Bihan's page friends were all in the demon world, so he really did not have any now. Still, having just Luffy alone was already enough. He did not need anyone else. Luffy stood alone in the icy snow. She heard a voice calling to her, so she followed the direction of the sound. When she opened her eyes, she realized that everything that had just happened had only been a dream. How could it have felt so real? After Luffy sat up, the first thing she did was go look for Brother Bihan. At that moment, the scene before her caught Luffy's attention. She saw a small animal that had just walked out through the doorway. From its tail, she could tell that it was a little kitten. Luffy thought it was just too cute and wanted to chase after it and play with it for a while. The kitten sensed that someone was following it and immediately ran off. Seeing that the little pet she was just about to catch had run away, Luffy hurried after it with quick steps. As a result, she did not watch where she was going and tripped over a raised fold in the carpet, about to fall. A hand that appeared out of nowhere caught her. This boy was Joshua. Luffy was absolutely certain it was him. He was about the same height as Bihan, and among the people in this mansion, only he fit the description. Joshua, who had been knocked down as well, was startled and quickly asked who Luffy was. After Luffy introduced herself, Joshua somewhat awkwardly apologized to her. "So, you are Miss Luffy, the one who came to visit my home today and wanted to be friends with me." Joshua reached out and pinched Luffy's little cheek, observing her carefully. "So it was you. I remember now. The little one has grown quite a bit." After hearing that, Luffy was completely stunned. What on earth was this guy talking about? Wasn't this the first time she had met him? But immediately after that, Joshua said another sentence. That completely shocked Luffy. "You really do not look like Narlia at all." Who was Arlia? That was Luffy's mother. How did he know her mother's name? Luffy only remembered that she had always lived in the forest with her mother since childhood. Because her mother had been cursed, she was trapped in the forest and had never left. Besides, shouldn't the only person who knew Luffy's mother's name be her father, Damien? Joshua, however, calmly explained that of course it was because they had met before. He really had not expected that she would forget. He had only just met her again and already wanted to snatch away Luffy's bracelet. Joshua was simply unbelievably rude. He could tell that the bracelet on Luffy's hand had been made by Bihan, but he had not expected that such a precious thing would be given to a human child. Luffy loudly scolded Joshua for this rude behavior. "I have never seen such an annoying person. We have only just met. Setting aside your lack of manners, you are even getting handsy." It felt as if the two of them were about to start arguing, but fortunately, Bihan came over just then. He had come to take Luffy back to the Duke's residence. The carriage outside was already prepared, and just as they were about to leave, Joshua still did not forget to walk up behind Luffy and lower his voice to criticize her. "You really are thick-skinned. You are already this old, yet you still call yourself Luffy over and over." Luffy was so angry she was completely speechless. That day, Luffy was watching Veronica practice swordsmanship. A familiar carriage slowly stopped in front of the Duke's residence. Luffy recognized it at a glance. Wasn't this the carriage the teacher used when traveling? She immediately ran over excitedly to greet them. But as soon as she saw clearly who had come, Luffy froze in place instantly. Standing beside the teacher was actually that annoying Joshua. "Hello, we meet again, Miss Luffy." Looking at the fake smile on Joshua's face, who would have thought that this guy was also so shameless? But as the host, Luffy could not directly turn him away. She could only greet him politely and had no choice but to shake his hand as well. But had Joshua really come to see Luffy this time just to make a friend? At their second meeting, the two of them shook hands with false friendliness like this. Luffy knew very well that Joshua definitely had no good intentions. Otherwise, why had he come along when she was attending class? Very soon, Joshua completely revealed his true nature. Just as the teacher laid out a huge pile of textbooks for Luffy to study, Joshua's performance began. Wearing a smug expression, he mocked Luffy, saying that this little bit of schoolwork should not be difficult, right? After hearing that, Luffy only responded with a smile. She did not want to embarrass herself in front of Joshua. The next second, she went all out. "This little bit of schoolwork is nothing in front of me. I can finish the other assignments just as well." The teacher at the side looked very pleased and kept praising Luffy for doing well. She even said that in the future, she would definitely become good friends with Joshua. Recalling that Damien had previously specifically asked her to teach Luffy well, now that she saw Luffy working so hard, there was absolutely no need to worry. Before long, Luffy happily showed off the homework she had finished. But immediately after that, the teacher assigned the next subject. And Joshua, who had been provoking her from the side just moments ago, had already disappeared. He slowly wandered into the garden by himself. Hello. At that moment, a voice suddenly called out to him from behind. When he turned around, it turned out to be Bihan. The two of them politely greeted each other, but Joshua sensed that Bihan seemed a little unusual. He took the initiative to ask Bihan whether he had time. Since they had run into each other, if you were willing, why not have a chat and become friends along the way? He had thought it would be a friendly conversation, but in the very next second, the two of them had already drawn their weapons and started fighting directly. After class, Lofi walked to the window and happened to see the scene, and she immediately worried that something bad was about to happen. She stuck her head out and shouted, Bihan, Joshua, stop right now. The two of them had only just met, and yet they had already started fighting. In order to stop them from continuing, the petite Lofi had no choice but to drag over a stool and struggle to climb onto the windowsill. She shouted loudly for them to stop and put down their swords, but although standing on the windowsill let her see farther, Lofi forgot about her own safety. Hearing Lofi's voice, the two of them finally stopped. Worried that something might happen to Lofi, Bihan hurriedly told her to get farther away from the windowsill. Joshua beside him also noticed the danger. He saw that Lofi was leaning too far out, which was far too dangerous. At that moment, Lofi's foot slipped. Unable to keep her balance, her body instantly lost its center of gravity and fell from the windowsill. Danger. Was she really going to die here this time? When Lofi opened her eyes again, she found that Joshua had caught her steadily. That moment just now had frightened Bihan terribly. He quickly ran over and hugged Lofi, his face full of relief at surviving the danger. He also thanked Joshua, thanking him for saving Lofi. Lofi also thanked Joshua separately and could not help praising him a few times, saying that he really was very talented in swordsmanship. Even someone as strong as Bihan could only fight him to a draw. But why had the two of them suddenly started fighting? Joshua said that he had only wanted to confirm one thing from Bihan. Starting from the bracelet Lofi had previously worn on her hand, Joshua had already seen that it had been made by Bihan with magic. But in the Duke's residence, magic clearly could not be used. So how had Bihan managed to do it? That was why Joshua had attacked him, wanting to verify his guess. And from the fight just now, Lofi had also guessed that since Joshua could fight Bihan to a draw, he most likely could use magic too, and not at just an ordinary level. Yes, I really can use magic. Facing Lofi's guess, Joshua admitted it directly. After hearing all this, all that remained on Lofi's face was shock. Subconsciously, she clenched her fists. Lofi's outfit today was simply unbearably cute. She had specially changed into new clothes just to follow Damien to see his majesty. But because of what had just happened with Joshua being able to use magic, she still felt somewhat down and lay on the bed lost in thought. Damien happened to notice Lofi's unusual behavior. He was puzzled. The usual Lofi was clearly always smiling brightly. What exactly had happened today? As a complete doting father, how could he possibly ignore it? He bent down, moved close to Lofi, and softly asked her if there was something making her unhappy, she should say it out loud and not keep it bottled up inside. Lofi actually also really wanted to pour out all the grievances filling her heart, but she knew that even if she said it, Damien definitely would not believe her, because the book from before had clearly written that. A few years later, Lofi would leave this world, and everything happening now in reality was exactly the same as what had been written in the book. Lofi really did not want to leave like this. She still had so many people she deeply loved, yet she could not change anything. In the end, she could only lie on the bed alone and sulk. Seeing Lofi shake her head desperately, it was obvious that she still did not plan to speak. Damien did not continue pressing her either. He stepped forward and pulled Lofi into his arms, gently comforting her. Daddy will always stay by Lofi's side. No matter what happens, I will never abandon you. After saying that, father and daughter lightly touched the tips of their noses together. With Damien's comfort, the gloom in Lofi's heart instantly disappeared, and she finally smiled again. Sure enough, with family by one side, many difficult problems become far less frightening. When she learned that Damien had changed into new clothes because he was preparing to enter the palace on official business, Lofi immediately spread out her arms and legs and hugged him tightly. Her meaning could not have been more obvious. Who was it that had just said he would not leave anyone behind? Words once spoken could not be taken back. Then again, the royal palace was the safest place in the empire. Ever since magical beasts had appeared, bringing Lofi along did not seem like it would be any problem. So Damien naturally took Lofi with him to the palace as well. It was Lofi's first time coming to the palace, and she was delighted beyond measure. It was far bigger than the Duke's residence. Her little short legs were almost sore from walking. At that moment, an official came over and exchanged pleasantries with Damien. After seeing Lofi, he bent down and greeted her. So you are the Duke's daughter. I had long heard of you, and today I finally get to meet you. I am very happy to make your acquaintance. Seeing how well they had been talking just now, Lofi decided that this person must be Damien's friend, so she decided to give him an adorable critical hit. Hello there. The way she greeted him was simply too adorable. That official's heart instantly started racing. In almost an instant, he was completely won over by Lofi. The surrounding nobles also saw the scene and all exclaimed that Lofi was too cute. They swarmed over one after another, clamoring to hug Luffy, or to personally shake her hand. This treatment was basically the aura of a true celebrity. Damien picked Luffy up in one motion and quickly walked toward the palace hall. At this moment, Luffy was still immersed in everyone's praise and affection. Faced with Damien's sudden reaction, she was full of confusion and could not help asking Damien why he had suddenly started running. Damien said that it was almost time to have an audience with His Majesty, but inwardly he was frantically complaining, as if you people can just touch my Luffy whenever you want. This sour jealousy was simply peak overprotective daughter dad behavior. Meanwhile, the commotion just now also attracted Joshua from behind. He had actually come to the palace as well. Joshua's father, Marquis Silas, also found it very strange. The Joshua of the past had been someone who hardly ever went out. But ever since coming back from the Duke's residence last time, he had completely changed. Not only had he suddenly started insisting on practicing swordsmanship, he was even now saying that he would inherit the Marquis household in the future. It was most likely because Luffy had praised his swordsmanship last time that he had become so different. And when he learned that Luffy had also followed Damien to see His Majesty, Joshua immediately grabbed the Marquis's hand and shouted, "Let's hurry into the palace too." This completely stunned Marquis Silas. Why was Joshua suddenly in such a hurry? What exactly did he want to do now? Unexpectedly, Luffy had actually run out alone and was even playing at adventuring in the palace. Just a moment ago, she had clearly been following Damien to see His Majesty. Because Damien had matters to discuss with His Majesty, he had told her to wait outside the door first. Joshua, who had been following behind, also arrived before the hall. He had come specifically to find Luffy. When he saw Damien come out of the main hall, Joshua immediately could not help running over to ask where Luffy had gone. Only then did Damien suddenly realize that Luffy was missing. After asking the guard at the entrance, he learned that Luffy had gotten bored from waiting and had run off to wander around on her own. As for Luffy's courage, it really was not small at all. Meanwhile, she was happily wandering around the palace by herself, her little short legs bouncing with every step. As a result, she attracted a large crowd of onlookers. "Young Lady Duke, you are just too adorable." These words of praise almost lifted Luffy up to the heavens. But after she got tired of wandering, she suddenly realized that she seemed to be lost. How was she supposed to get back now? Unable to find anyone to ask for directions, Luffy ran around everywhere like a headless fly. At that moment, a large tree in the distance caught her attention. She could not help slowly walking toward that tree. This towering tree must have lived for several hundred years, right? Suddenly, a voice from behind called out to Luffy. "Who are you? This courtyard is not a place just anyone can enter." That little boy had a head of dazzling golden hair that was especially eye-catching, the color even somewhat similar to her own hair. Looking at the way he was dressed, wasn't he a prince? Of course, Luffy did not know any of that. She only learned after asking that this little boy was the caretaker of the courtyard. She hurriedly apologized, saying that she had accidentally wandered in, and even asked the little boy to keep it a secret and not tell anyone that she had sneaked in. Seeing how cute Luffy was, the prince agreed at once. The blonde little boy before her was none other than Prince John of the Empire, and he was politely introducing himself to Luffy. As for Luffy, who had accidentally wandered into the courtyard, he did not blame her in the slightest. Instead, like an older brother caring for a younger sister, he accompanied her patiently and gently. John took Luffy's little hand and brought her along to stroll around the palace. The two of them came to that big tree and quietly admired it. The leaves were gently blown down by the breeze. John stretched out his hand, but still could not reach the higher branches. "If I were a little taller, I could touch them." He also said that the next time he met Luffy, he would be able to pick the flowers from the tree and give them to her. When John said these things, was it really just an older brother's affection for a younger sister, or did he have other feelings for Luffy? He even promised Luffy that as long as she wanted to come find him, she would be able to see him anytime. Then John sat down on the grass and gestured for Luffy to sit beside him. At the very moment they had just met, John had already sensed that Luffy seemed to be hiding something in her heart. He said that if Luffy was willing, she could talk about it, and maybe he could help a little. How could Luffy not want to? But when she thought about how the book said she would leave this world a few years later, no matter whom she told such a thing to, probably no one would believe her. At that moment, Luffy suddenly thought of a reason. Using a friend's experience as a cover, she asked John what one should do if they wanted to avoid death. After hearing this, John's expression also became somewhat melancholy. He had not expected that someone as young as Luffy would already be thinking about life and death. Then he said that when people grow up, they will eventually die. This was the law of nature. As for John's answer, Luffy could only accept it helplessly. She had originally wanted to properly explain what was written in the book, but the more she tried to explain, the less clear it became. Just then, a soldier walked over and leaned close to John to whisper something to him. As soon as the soldier finished speaking, John hurriedly said goodbye to Luffy. It looked as if something urgent had happened, but now that Luffy had been left behind, how was she supposed to get back? The sun was about to set, and if she did not find her way back soon, it would really be dark. Luffy began to quicken her pace, running along on her short little legs. At that moment, someone suddenly called out to her from behind. So you're here. Unexpectedly, the first person to find Luffy was Joshua. Why would Joshua appear here? Perhaps this was what people called fate. Joshua answered Luffy, saying that he had only come with use to see his majesty and was merely passing by. But in reality, Joshua had clearly come specifically to look for the lost Luffy. He was probably just a little embarrassed, so he did not say it directly. You two really are a pair of bickering frenemies. You had only just met again not long ago, and you were already arguing again. Luffy complained that Joshua had no manners and actually called her father by his name, while Joshua immediately fired back, saying that Luffy was meddling too much. Then he turned around and teased her, asking if she had gotten lost. And after Joshua said that, Luffy became even more unwilling to admit it, and immediately stubbornly said that Damien was the one who had gotten lost, and she had only come out to look for him. Joshua naturally did not believe her, but he still reached out his hand to her, signaling a truce so they could go back together. Seeing that he had yielded first, Luffy temporarily put down her prejudice as well and took his hand amicably. But this pair of rivals had not been holding hands for long before they started arguing again. Even the hands they were holding were secretly competing against each other. The reason Joshua was so resentful toward Luffy was because he felt that Luffy had forgotten him. Only after Joshua reminded her like that did Luffy suddenly remember. So it turned out that the voice calling out to her in the forest before had been Joshua, and at that time, he had still been a black dragon. Luffy finally remembered. So Joshua was the black giant lizard she had once saved. No, for Joshua, that was definitely not a giant lizard. With old acquaintances reunited, all the memories came flooding back at once, and Luffy could not help but clasp Joshua's hands with both of hers. I'm not a giant lizard, I'm a dragon. Joshua immediately corrected what she had just said. The moment Luffy thought of Joshua actually being a dragon, she suddenly remembered what Prince John had once said. There was an illness in the prince's body that even doctors could not cure, and if one wanted to delay death, one needed the powerful and pure heart of a dragon. And Luffy also thought that she too would face death in the future. If she had Joshua's heart, then could she also extend her lifespan? But in the very next second, Luffy suddenly came to her senses, her face filled with shock. She felt ashamed of her own thought just now. She was not selfish enough to hurt Joshua just so she could stay alive. Luffy quickly turned around and walked ahead while pulling Joshua by the hand. Filled with guilt, she did not dare look at Joshua's face at all. But Joshua behind her wore a smile and was clearly very happy. He was glad that Luffy still remembered him and had not forgotten him. Luffy turned back at Joshua irritably and said that when she had saved him back then, he had clearly been a pitch-black big lizard. Looking at the way he appeared as a human now, how could she possibly have recognized him? Wrong. I already told you I'm not a giant lizard, and I'm not a lizard either. I'm a dragon. How many times do I have to repeat this before you understand? Joshua behind her impatiently emphasized once again that he was a dragon. And the hand Luffy was holding made Joshua clearly feel that. Even though they had not seen each other for several years, and Luffy had grown quite a bit compared with back then, her hand was still just as small as it had been in his memory. Only the warmth coming from her palm was still as warm as before. Joshua had always remembered that warmth. At that time, Joshua had been injured and had collapsed alone in the freezing snow. Fortunately, he had met Luffy and had received her help. What did it feel like to take care of a talking black dragon? Luffy had personally experienced it. With a troubled expression, she pleaded to her mother, hoping her mother could save the black dragon lying on the ground beside her. Her mother had not originally wanted to get involved in such matters and had planned to let the black dragon live or die on its own. But in the end, she still could not refuse Luffy's plea and eventually stepped in to save it. As it turned out, Luffy's mother had known this black dragon for a long time, and she also knew that when the black dragon was sleeping, its body would not grow. And now this was already the second time she had seen the black dragon, and it looked about the same age as Luffy. So she did not stop Luffy from playing with it either. As for this talking black dragon, Luffy was practically thrilled beyond measure because she finally had a playmate. Luffy sat on the black dragon's back and shouted for the black dragon to transform for her or to turn into something else. Shouted for the black dragon to transform for her or to turn into something else. The black dragon immediately understood that what Luffy meant was magic, so it thought it might as well create some things Luffy had never seen before. The black dragon knew that this forest was covered in snow all year round and that it was always winter. So in the next moment, it created a group of butterflies dancing gracefully in the air. Luffy stared with eyes full of wonder, since this was the first time she had ever seen such creatures, and she happily reached out to play with the butterflies. In the days after that, Luffy brought medicine every day to take care of the black dragon. The black dragon also felt Luffy's sincerity, and after its injuries gradually healed, it was time for it to say goodbye to Luffy and leave. It only hoped that if there were still a chance, they could meet again next time. You can't leave. Of course Luffy was unwilling. She could not leave this forest at all. If the black dragon left, she would never see it again. After hearing those words, the black dragon thought seriously for a moment, then moved close to Luffy and touched the tip of its nose to hers. Then from now on, I'll be the one to come find you. If you leave this forest before I come, then come to the Marquis of Celis's residence to find me. In fact, Joshua had already said these words to Lofi long ago. It was only that Lofi had already forgotten them. A kind little human girl had saved a black dragon, and before the black dragon left, it had also made a promise with this little girl. Whoever had the chance in the future would go visit the other. Afterward, the black dragon transformed into a human little boy, Joshua, and returned to the Marquis's household in the human world. Joshua had always been very lonely because all of his dragon companions had already died, and among the dragons in this world, he was the only one left. But fortunately, at this time, he once again met Lofi, the one who had once saved him. When he learned that Lofi had not completely forgotten the past version of him, an indescribable happiness suddenly welled up in Joshua's heart. Perhaps it was because at last someone truly cared about him, or perhaps he had long since already regarded Lofi as family. Just then, Father Damien also finally found the lost Lofi. Lofi immediately spread her arms and ran quickly toward him, calling out, "Dad." But Damien, who always doted on his daughter beyond measure, did not immediately step forward to hug her this time. Instead, he lowered his head, his expression somewhat gloomy. He questioned Lofi about why she had run off alone. Although the palace was not exactly dangerous, the fact that she had left without saying a word really had frightened everyone badly. There was not a single thing wrong with what Damien said. Lofi also knew that she had been in the wrong, so she lowered her head and obediently reflected on it, then apologized to Damien, saying that she should not have done something that made others worry. Damien actually only wanted to educate Lofi appropriately. Then he reached out and patted her head, indicating that he was not truly angry. He just hoped she would not do this again in the future. At the same time, he also thanked Joshua for helping find Lofi, and after hearing that, a smile immediately appeared on Joshua's face, and an idea instantly popped into his mind. Since Damien had already personally thanked him, then why not strike while the iron was hot and say what he really wanted to say as well? Joshua simply got straight to the point and said to Damien, "May I now be friends with the young lady of the Duke's household? And can I also see her often in the future?" Friends? That actually sounds pretty good. I agree. Making friends should have been a good thing, but two people were surprised because of it. In the blink of an eye, 3 years passed. Lofi had grown taller and become even prettier, but Joshua clung to Lofi every day like a little tail that could not be shaken off. Every few days, he would run to the Duke's residence just to play with Lofi. This made even Lofi unable to resist complaining about him, telling Joshua to come to her house less often in the future. Although those words were not polite at all, after hearing them, Joshua not only did not get angry, but instead directly asked Lofi in return. Wasn't Lofi herself the one who liked playing with him? How had it somehow become his fault in the end? He even suggested that otherwise, in the future, Lofi could also go play at his count's residence instead. Of course, Lofi wanted to as well, but Damien was simply too worried about her safety. Not only did he forbid her from leaving the Duke's residence, he had even set magical restrictions around the Duke's residence, so she simply could not get out, and outsiders also had a hard time getting in. Joshua raised his hand and cast magic, and very quickly sensed that this layer of magical restriction was actually not especially strong. So he said to Lofi that if Lofi really wanted to remove these magical restrictions, he could help lift the barrier. That way, wouldn't Lofi be able to freely come and go from the Duke's residence? But after thinking about it, Lofi refused, because after all, this was a barrier that Damien had specially set up to protect her when he was not by her side. Then she quickly sent Joshua onto the carriage back to the Count's residence. Before she had met Joshua, it had always been Bihan, who was like an older brother, accompanying Lofi, taking care of her and playing with her. But ever since Joshua appeared, Bihan had already begun to feel somewhat jealous, and later he came to see Lofi less and less often. Perhaps in his view, the current Lofi no longer needed him anymore. Is that so? Just as Lofi had returned to her room, she happened to run into Bihan. Lofi knew that she had not played with Bihan for a long time, and she could also see the disappointment in his heart. To dispel his worries, she walked up to him, gently placed her hand on his shoulder, and said, "Seriously, compared with the friends I met later, the one I like most is still family." Though it was only a short sentence, it expressed her feelings perfectly clearly. After hearing this, Bihan's face turned red all at once, and he instantly became shy. This clever little Lofi really understood everything so clearly. In class, the teacher was thanking Lofi for everything she had done for Joshua. As Joshua's mother, she knew very well that it was precisely because Joshua had Lofi's companionship that he had slowly begun to change. Joshua had been in poor health since childhood, and later he had become even more quiet and withdrawn. But ever since he met Lofi, not only had he started talking more, he had also smiled more, and even he, with his frail body, had unexpectedly begun practicing swordsmanship. After hearing all this, Lofi instead froze on the spot, because the Joshua the teacher spoke of was completely different from the Joshua she knew. What in the world was going on? Lofi was suddenly scooped up into Brother Bihan's arms before she even had time to react. Before she could recover her senses, Bihan had already settled her onto the bed, covered her with a blanket, and taken care of her in every possible way. Lofi did not actually look weak. because she was sick with a cold. It was only because she had something on her mind and had not slept well last night, so she was sleepy and listless today. Seeing that something was off with Luffy, Bihan directly carried her back so she could get some proper sleep. Previously, the teacher had once mentioned to Luffy that her son Joshua had been very frail since childhood. It was also because Luffy stayed by his side that he had gradually become this healthy. These words caused doubts to arise in Luffy's heart. So she went to find Joshua. With her hands on her hips and pretending to be angry, she questioned him. Where had the real Joshua actually gone? The Joshua now was not the real Joshua at all. After hearing Luffy's words, Joshua himself was also completely baffled. These days, he had been the one accompanying Luffy all along. If what Luffy meant was true, could there be another Joshua besides him? Luffy then said that the Joshua in the teacher's words was weak and sickly, while the Joshua now had been transformed from a powerful black dragon. That also meant that the sickly Joshua had long since disappeared, and the Joshua before her was fake. So, what exactly was his purpose? Joshua could see the concern in Luffy's heart. He walked up to Luffy and said half-jokingly that she did not need to be so nervous. The identity of Joshua was not important to him at all. If Luffy was willing to keep it a secret, then he would tell her the whole story from beginning to end. Luffy also agreed to keep Joshua's secret, and that this conversation absolutely would not be known by a third person. As it turned out, the black dragon had always been sleeping, until one day someone woke it up. Today, Luffy had something on her mind, and in order to thoroughly ask the truth out, she planted her hands on her hips, put on an angry look, and questioned the black dragon Joshua in front of her. Where had the truly frail Joshua of the past actually gone? Black dragon Joshua raised his index finger, signaling that Luffy absolutely had to keep it secret, and only then did he explain the reason he had become Joshua and stayed at the Count's residence. The black dragon had originally been sleeping all along, until one day, a man awakened it. That man was none other than Count Just in his younger years, and the one in his arms was Joshua, who had already died. Just knew full well that the dead could not come back to life, but his wife had been so devastated by Joshua's death that she was almost driven mad. So he begged the Black Dragon to take his son Joshua's place and continue living on until the day he reached adulthood. The Black Dragon smelled the aura on Just and concluded that he was the descendant of the one bound by contract. Since this was the only wish of the descendant of the contract bearer, the Black Dragon agreed to the request. Using Joshua's identity, it lived on in the human world in his place. But after learning the truth, Luffy instead found it even harder to sleep. So, Bihan carried Luffy back onto the bed. He even softly hummed a lullaby, coaxing Luffy to slowly fall asleep. After Bihan left, Luffy also drifted into a dream. In the darkness, Luffy walked forward alone. At that moment, two maids appeared before her and openly gossiped about her without any restraint. They said that Luffy was not the Duke's daughter at all, but just some unwanted wild child, and that the Duke had never even had a lover, so how could he possibly have a child? In any case, sooner or later, she would be kicked out of the Duke's residence. These sharp and spiteful words completely ignited Luffy's anger. She raised her hand and was about to rush up and teach those two maids a harsh lesson. But when she woke up, the person she had grabbed was actually Joshua. Joshua was also startled. Just what kind of dream had Luffy had to welcome me like this? Luffy decided not to continue taking lessons with a private tutor. She wanted to go study at school together with Joshua. Just as she woke up from her sleep, Joshua had already quietly come to her bedside. He just had not expected that the newly awakened Luffy would directly grab him by the collar. Luffy stood there in a daze, recalling everything that had just happened in the dream. And Joshua had actually only come to ask Luffy to play together. Seeing that she kept spacing out and ignoring him, he reached out and gave Luffy's little head a hard knock, making her cry out in pain on the spot. She immediately chased after Joshua, insisting on knocking him back once, so he could also have a taste of how painful it was. Only after the two of them had made a fuss for a while did they finally sit down together on the sofa. Joshua told Luffy that in the future, he might not come to play with her as often as before. As soon as Luffy heard this, she immediately widened her eyes and stared straight at Joshua, pressing him on what exactly he meant by that. Joshua scratched the back of his head and explained that it was because he was preparing to attend a noble school. At the noble school of rumor, the students not only possess talents beyond ordinary people, but also considerable wealth. Luffy clapped her hands to congratulate Joshua, thinking that after he went to school, he would surely get to know many new friends. But after hearing this, Joshua's expression became slightly downcast, even a little disappointed. Because in his heart, if Luffy were going somewhere, he would definitely feel very sad, and he would also feel that it was a great pity. He might even be unable to resist secretly running off to see her. But Luffy's reaction now was completely the opposite of what he had imagined. After Joshua left, because Joshua was about to leave, Luffy hugged a pillow and lay on the bed all by herself in a gloomy mood. Actually, in her heart, she also really wanted to keep playing with Joshua. So she made up her mind that she too wanted to go study at the noble school. She excitedly went to find Damien and told him her idea. But Damien directly rejected Luffy's request. In his view, compared with the outside world, staying at home was still the safest. Seeing that Damien disagreed, Lofi turned and left in a huff, while quietly starting to make her own little calculations. Lofi had been tricked by Joshua, and she had actually been happy about it for so long. Just a moment ago, she had still been full of sorrow, sitting there all alone in low spirits. That was only because yesterday Joshua had said that he was going to study at a noble school. In the days that followed, he would no longer have time to come play with Lofi. This left Lofi alone, her heart full of disappointment. But right at that moment, Lofi suddenly thought that since Joshua would not have time to come find her, then could she go into the school herself to find Joshua and play with him? So she immediately pressed the teacher, asking whether outsiders could enter the noble school or not. The teacher replied that the school's management was extremely strict and outsiders were absolutely not allowed in. At the same time, she was also very curious why Lofi suddenly wanted to enter the school. After learning that the reason was that Joshua was about to attend the noble school, the teacher quickly explained that Joshua had originally planned to go to the school a few days earlier, but later canceled it and was not going after all. Lofi was stunned when she heard this. Since Joshua had long ago decided not to go to the noble school, then why had he still lied to Lofi and said he was going? Only then did Lofi realize that she had been completely toyed with by Joshua all along. So angry that she clenched her fists, she fumed inwardly. Joshua, you've gone too far. Just you wait. Brother Bihan was sitting alone on the sofa, quietly reading a book, but in his heart, he kept thinking about Lofi. In his mind, he could not help recalling what Lofi had said to him before. Back then, Lofi had clearly said that in her heart, family was the most important. But ever since Joshua appeared, Lofi had played with Joshua every single day. This kind of change made Bihan less and less willing to accept it, and it also made him feel that the distance between him and Lofi was slowly growing farther. Moreover, Lofi had also become much colder toward him than before. If things went on like this, perhaps their relationship would only become worse. And just at that moment, Joshua suddenly appeared, interrupting Bihan's train of thought. He had come to play with Lofi, and Bihan clearly did not welcome his arrival at all. He even directly hinted that Joshua should probably stop coming so casually to the Duke's residence in the future. Just as the atmosphere between the two was about to become tense enough to draw swords, Lofi suddenly hurried over and stood between them. She still had absolutely no idea why Joshua and Bihan were standing together. She even mistakenly thought that the two of them might already have become friends. She did not notice at all the sharp contrast between the smile on Bihan's face and Joshua's thoroughly displeased expression. Just as Lofi curiously asked why the two of them were standing together, their answers were surprisingly identical. Both said that they were waiting here for Lofi. Clearly, their relationship was nowhere near good enough for even their words to match, but now they could only pretend that everything was perfectly normal. The moment Joshua saw Lofi come over, he took out Lofi's favorite strawberry cake. He knew Lofi loved this, so when he passed by the cake shop, he had specially brought one for her. Faced with her favorite dessert, Lofi was instantly and completely won over. Eat some more. Joshua smugly turned his head and flashed Bihan a smile. Just by looking at the expression on his face, one could tell that he was clearly showing off to Bihan, as if saying that Lofi and I have the better relationship. It was just a strawberry cake, yet it actually dealt Bihan such a blow that his whole mood became gloomy. Fortunately, just at that moment, the Duke happened to call Bihan over. Only then was he able to remove himself in time from the unbelievably awkward scene before him. Only after finishing the cake did Lofi suddenly remember that she had actually forgotten one very important thing. She angrily questioned Joshua about why he had lied to her. It turned out to be about the last time Joshua had deceived Lofi, saying that he was going to noble school and would no longer have time to come play with her. Looking at how serious and angry Lofi seemed, the corners of Joshua's mouth slowly lifted into a smile instead. So in Lofi's heart, he really was still a very important friend. If they were just ordinary friends, a lie might not be taken to heart at all. But if someone was deceived by a friend they truly cared about, that was probably the only reason they would get this angry. It was as if Joshua had suddenly understood something. He stepped forward and grabbed Lofi's arm, staring tightly into her eyes as he said that Lofi actually did not want to be separated from him either, right? Lofi could not bear to see the older brother who had always cherished her leave. She could only spread her arms wide and hold Bihan tightly, while tears kept welling up uncontrollably in her eyes. But she was also afraid that if she really started crying out loud, it would look too embarrassing. So she could only grit her teeth and keep the tears from falling. Just a moment ago, she had still been secretly happy that Joshua would not be going to the noble school, but she had never expected that the moment she came back, she would hear the news that Brother Bihan was going to the noble school. At the thought that in the future she would be the only one left in the Duke's residence, with no one to play with her anymore, Lofi felt unbearably miserable. With reddened eyes, she looked straight at Bihan and begged him not to go to the noble school because she truly did not want to stay home alone. Bihan also doted on Lofi as his younger sister, but he had his own helpless reasons as well. In order for the family to continue growing stronger, he had to gain the connections and relationships that came with the noble school. Bihan reached out and gently stroked Lofi's long hair, hoping she could understand, and after learning that Bihan had decided to go to school in order to protect the family, Lofi immediately said with a serious expression, "Then I can go to school in Brother Bihan's place. so Brother Bihan will not have to leave the Duke's residence. Faced with this rare display of heartfelt concern from Luffy, Bihan contentedly pulled her gently into his arms. He comforted Luffy, saying that he would come back as soon as vacation started, and that he also could not bear to let Luffy suffer at school. By the next day, thinking that Bihan was about to leave, Luffy had cried almost the entire night, and her big eyes were so swollen that they were narrowed to slits. On the other side, Damien, who was preparing to head to the palace, saw his daughter crying like this. He bent down to comfort her with heartache, and with Daddy Damien's soothing words, Luffy finally felt a little better inside. After seeing Damien off, she happened to run into Bihan and Veronica, who were about to go out. It turned out they were going out to buy some things needed for enrollment. As soon as Luffy heard that, she immediately felt that it would surely be interesting, so she ran back to change clothes and went out with them. The three of them walked together in well-coordinated outfits, and the scene was so beautiful it looked like a painting. Having an older brother who is too handsome really could be troublesome sometimes, because no matter where he went, he would easily become everyone's focus. For his upcoming studies at the noble school, Bihan had specially come to the clothing store today. He planned to have a new school uniform custom made. The shop assistant was taking Bihan's measurements for the uniform, and by the wall not far away, 3 little girls were hiding, who knew what exactly they were looking at, but each one of them was utterly fascinated and enchanted. Following the direction of those girls' gazes, it turned out that all of them were staring at the same person, and that person was Bihan. Just his back alone had already earned him a stream of praise from the girls. They all sighed that Bihan was just like a prince from a fairy tale, and that he was unbelievably handsome. At the thought that they might get to see him often at school in the future, the 3 girls immediately became even more excited. At that moment, Luffy had even already pictured in her mind how handsome Brother Bihan would look when he grew up. She even began to worry whether too many girls would confess to Bihan at school in the future, and since she would not be by his side, she would not be able to properly screen them for him. "Excuse me, may I sit next to you?" Just then, a strange little boy's voice suddenly interrupted Luffy's thoughts. Although she did not know the little boy, Luffy still politely moved aside a little and let him sit down. But after the 2 of them sat down, neither of them spoke first, and the boy only sneaked glances at Luffy from time to time. As the atmosphere became more and more awkward, the warm-hearted Luffy instead took the initiative and asked first, "Is someone in your family also going to the noble school?" The little boy looked surprised and did not understand how Luffy knew that. Luffy replied calmly that it was actually very simple because you are about the same age as me, and it is still too early for you to go to the noble school now, so it should be your older brother or older sister who is going there. The little boy quickly explained that it was indeed his older brother who was enrolling, and that he had only come along with him. It was just that when he saw Luffy sitting here alone, he wanted to come over and get to know her. After saying that, he lowered his head again, looking a little shy, stammering as if he wanted to express his affection for Luffy, yet unable to get the words out. The more he thought about it, the more nervous he became, and his face turned red as well. Just when the little boy had finally gathered the courage and was about to say it out loud, Brother Bihan just happened to appear at that very moment and interrupted him directly. When it came to a stranger flirting with his little sister, there was no way an older brother would simply agree to that. Just when that little boy was about to confess his feelings to Luffy, Bihan appeared in time and interrupted him. "Luffy, were you getting bored from waiting?" Bihan's sudden words instantly left the little boy at a loss, so he could only sit quietly to the side and listen to the siblings' conversation. Luffy knew that Brother Bihan was worried about her, so she quickly said she was fine. She even urged Bihan to hurry and take care of his own matters. At that moment, the little boy's older brother had also finished up and called for him to go back together. Blushing, the little boy hurriedly tossed out one sentence before running off. "Then I'll see you at the noble school." But before Luffy could even respond, the little boy had already run far away. He still did not know that Luffy actually would not be going to school at all. When Luffy began searching for Brother Bihan's figure again, she saw that he was being approached by a blonde girl. With a smile all over her face, the girl asked Bihan what his name was, but Bihan only coldly gave his name. Although the girl kept speaking in a lively and cheerful tone afterward, she still could not make the cold-faced Bihan show even the slightest smile. After exchanging a few polite words, Bihan turned and left. Luffy saw all of this, and she immediately felt a little unhappy. He was clearly her brother, so how could he be so cold to other girls? That simply would not do. So she secretly decided that in a little while, she would definitely give Bihan a proper talking to. Luffy had just walked out of the shop, breathing in the fresh air outside. She saw a little girl in a sky blue dress stumble and fall right in front of her. "Let me help you up." The little girl had long silver white hair and a pair of sky blue eyes, and she looked especially lovely. But when Luffy saw the little girl's face clearly, she revealed a look of utter disbelief. It turned out that this little girl's hair color and appearance were extremely similar to Luffy's mother's, except for the coldness she gave off. That was completely different from the warm smile of Luffy's mother. The girl who would one day replace her identity had appeared right before her eyes, just like that, and Luffy was so shocked that she even forgot to loosen the little hand she was clutching tightly. Her name was Dahlia, and she was the same age as Luffy. When Luffy first saw her, she even thought it was what her mother must have looked like as a child. The same silver white hair and sky blue eyes, only that cold aura was completely different from her mother's gentle smile. Luffy moved closer to Dahlia and stared straight at her, her eyes fixed on her in an extremely direct way. Instead, Dahlia was the one who looked confused from being stared at, her expression seeming to say that there must be something wrong with this little girl Luffy. Luffy had once read in a book that after she left this world due to illness, the adopted daughter Damien took in afterward was Dahlia, because Damien needed her to become the heir of the family. For someone who had leaped from being a viscount's daughter to becoming a duke's daughter, this was an opportunity that came only once in 100 years. But Dahlia refused Damien's proposal to make her the duke's daughter. When she returned to Viscount Lopez's household, she was shut out by her family. In the end, she was even driven out of the house. Dahlia could only choose to compromise and come to the duke's residence to become an adopted daughter. Compared to Luffy, who was now merely being gossiped about by maids, Dahlia was actually more beloved by everyone in the duke's residence. At this moment, Dahlia's mother came and found her, watching Dahlia leave together with her mother. The intimacy between mother and daughter made Luffy curious. Clearly, the book had said that Dahlia had always been abused in the Lopez family, but judging by how things looked now, her mother seemed to love her very much as well. In Luffy's view, perhaps Dahlia was just someone with the same name. Meanwhile, Veronica, who had finished looking at the merchandise, also walked out and casually bought all the clothes in the shop for Luffy. Although Luffy felt very helpless about it, she could only accept it when she saw that Brother Bihan had also come out from inside. Luffy immediately walked over to him, preparing to give him a proper lecture. It was because his attitude toward that strange girl in the shop just now had been far too cold. Luffy worried that after he got to school, he would not be able to make friends, so like a little adult, she began to lecture Brother Bihan at length. In front of other girls, her older brother was always taciturn, with a cold gaze. But in front of his own younger sister, he was as gentle as water. His doting had reached the extreme. Faced with a Brother Bihan like this, little sister Luffy did not feel happy, but rather a little worried. She was worried that if Bihan kept going on like this, he would not be able to make friends at school in the future. So she earnestly began educating Brother Bihan that he could not always treat girls so coldly. But Bihan, who listened to Luffy's nagging, wore a well-behaved expression on his face. This scene made Veronica, who was watching the drama from the side, laugh out loud, saying that it seemed only Miss Luffy could keep young Master Bihan in check. As for the request Luffy made, Bihan said that he would change, but after hearing that, Luffy still looked full of worry. In the end, Brother Bihan was still a block of wood who did not understand flexibility. The siblings kept murmuring to each other like this, one sentence after another. When Bihan was in the shop packing up notebooks and ink, a small round object by the roadside caught Luffy's attention. "Veronica, can you buy this for me?" When Veronica saw that what Luffy was holding was actually a communication stone, she could not help but wonder what Luffy wanted to buy it for. Luffy smiled and said that she wanted to give it to someone, and I guess the person she most wanted to give it to right now could only be none other than Brother Bihan. After returning to the Duke's residence, Damien could not wait to hug Luffy. "Why did you go out without saying a word? Do you know how worried Daddy was?" Faced with Damien's concern, Luffy hurriedly apologized and said she would not do that again in the future. She also asked Damien to forgive her, and at the same time made a request of him. "Go ahead, what request is it?" This was the happiest stretch of time for the brother and sister to be together, and fortunately Joshua did not appear, which allowed Brother Bihan to have Luffy's time all to himself. As the younger sister, Luffy was actually very sensible. She knew that only a few days remained before Bihan left for school. She also felt guilty because she had been spending all her time with Joshua recently. She had neglected Brother Bihan. Now Luffy was asking her father Damien whether she could temporarily stop attending classes for the next few days. It was not because she hated studying, nor because she disliked the teacher. It was because Brother Bihan was about to leave home and go study at the noble school. So Luffy felt that every remaining day was precious. She wanted to stay by Brother Bihan's side properly and keep resting until the day he set off for the noble school. After hearing this, Damien was first stunned for a moment, although he still pretended to think seriously about whether he should let Luffy take a break. The next second, he still smiled and agreed to Luffy's request. After receiving Damien's permission, Luffy was so happy she was like a little rabbit, and she immediately turned and ran off to find Brother Bihan to play with him. At this time, the two siblings were sitting side by side, looking at a book. The content recorded in the book was about spirit masters. There had once been a village that suffered a severe drought, and in the end, With the help of a spirit master summoning spirits, rain was successfully brought down. Luffy only knew about mages and knights. This was the first time she had heard of spirit masters, so she was very curious whether it had all been made up by someone. Bihan explained from the side that spirit masters really had existed in the past. There had even been some spirit masters who were human, and they were able to accurately identify demons. But it was not the spirit masters themselves who recognized them. Rather, the spirits recognized the demons first, and then informed the spirit masters. Luffy could not help but marvel at how amazing the abilities of spirit masters were. But she still did not know at this moment that she actually had this ability too, and could see through demons disguised as humans. Is your younger sister as clingy as Luffy too? From daytime onward, she had been playing with brother Bihan the entire time, and at night she still insisted on staying by Bihan's side and keeping him company. Because once Bihan went to school, he would be living there, and after he left, they would not be able to see each other for a while. So Luffy especially cherished these few remaining days. She stayed almost inseparably by Bihan's side. Daddy Damien also understood what Luffy was thinking. Not only did he have the teacher suspend lessons for a few days, he also specifically instructed Veronica that if Joshua came to play with Luffy, she should stop him directly outside the Duke's residence. All so that Luffy and Bihan, this pair of siblings, could have more time together. When Joshua learned that Luffy was not attending class, he had excitedly wanted to go to the Duke's residence to play with her, but he was stopped by his mother instead. The Duke's residence asked me to tell you that you do not need to go keep Miss Luffy company these days. After hearing his mother's words, Joshua's face was also full of surprise. They had clearly been so close before, and now he was actually not allowed to play with her anymore. Bihan is leaving home tomorrow to go away to school. At this moment, he is packing his luggage with a gloomy expression. Only now did he realize just how reluctant he was to leave Luffy. At that moment, Luffy, wearing pajamas, knocked on the door and walked in. She asked Bihan shyly if she could keep sleeping beside him tonight. Of course you can. You're my little sister. After all, Bihan said, unable to resist stepping forward and taking Luffy's small hand. The two of them chatted like this until late at night. Luffy looked at brother Bihan with both eyes full of reluctance, her whole face showing how unwilling she was to part with him. Then she asked Bihan to promise her that as soon as school went on break, he would definitely come back to see her. Bihan responded with a happy face, "Of course I'll come back to see you as soon as vacation starts. And don't always look like you're about to cry. You look the prettiest when you smile, little sister." And so, the brother and sister spent the night talking heart to heart. The next morning arrived. Bihan had already changed into the school's new uniform and was walking forward quickly. At this moment, Damien was already standing there waiting for him. Whenever little sister Luffy was unhappy, brother Bihan would always comfort her and encourage her from the side. But now Bihan was leaving. If Luffy had worries in the future, there might be no one left to listen to her and help carry her burdens. Today was the day the siblings would part. Wearing his school uniform, Bihan looked somewhat nervous. Going to study at the Noble Academy was something he had to do for the Prodim family. He was also afraid that he might mess things up. But in front of Damien, Bihan still forced himself to assure him that this time, he absolutely would not let him down. Yet Damien was not as stern as before. Instead, he comforted Bihan calmly and gently, telling him not to put too much pressure on himself and that it would be enough just to take good care of himself. Although Damien and Bihan were not related by blood, it was clear from Damien's expression that he had long cherished Bihan as if he were his own son. Damien's words made Bihan feel a father-son-like warmth, and an unconscious smile appeared on his face. At the side, little sister Luffy still wanted to cling to Bihan and beg him not to leave, asking him to stay with her one more day. This time, Bihan did not listen to Luffy. The school's opening date had long been set and could no longer be changed. Luffy could only watch helplessly as Bihan got into the carriage and left for school. She puffed up her chubby little cheeks in frustration, her whole face filled with unhappiness. In the end, brother Bihan had still left. Seeing this, Damien smiled and teased Luffy and also casually brought up the previous agreement with Bihan. Because he had needed to accompany Bihan before, Damien had let Luffy rest for a few days. Now that Bihan had gone to school, didn't that mean Luffy should also go study? Luffy had not expected Papa Damien to keep such a close eye on her. Her brother had only just left, and she already had to go to class right after. When class time came, Joshua, who always liked following behind the teacher, did not appear. Where had she gone? Only then did the bored Luffy remember that her former playmate Joshua had not come to see her lately. So she lay on the sofa gloomily, wondering whether something had happened to Joshua. Just then Veronica saw Luffy looking like this and thought she was in a bad mood because she had quarreled with Joshua. When she learned it was because Joshua had not come to see her, she explained it to Luffy. It turned out that Lord Damien had personally written Joshua a letter. The contents of the letter said that he was not allowed to come to the ducal residence during this period, all so that Luffy could have more time to stay with Bihan. Only after hearing this did Luffy understand everything, and she had not expected Papa Damien to spoil her so much. Thinking about how wronged Joshua must have felt, Lofi decided to do something to save their friendship. Joshua was sulking all alone because Damien would not let him enter the ducal residence. A carriage arriving outside the window caught his attention, and Joshua thought it was a visiting guest. The moment he turned around, he hid in his room and started playing with the cat. Before long, Lofi had already appeared at the door. The kitten had long since smelled Lofi's scent and ran over to cling tightly to her. Seeing Lofi suddenly appear before him, Joshua stood up in shock. "How did you come to Count Silas's residence? And how did you know I was hiding in this room?" In order to see her good friend Joshua, Lofi had specially put on the new clothes she had bought. She was simply so adorable it should have been illegal, and even the kitten could not help but come close to her. Faced with Lofi's sudden appearance, Joshua was so startled that he stood up. He was very puzzled as to why Lofi had appeared in his home. He knew Damien had always forbidden Lofi from leaving the ducal residence. And how had Lofi known he was hiding in this room? Holding the kitten in her arms, Lofi explained to Joshua, "Don't you always hate having guests at home the most? The first time I came to your house, you acted the same way, so I guessed you might be hiding here. I didn't expect I'd really guess right." Joshua had not expected Lofi to understand him so well. Then he deliberately put on a cold attitude and questioned Lofi, "Since you wouldn't let me go to your ducal residence to play with you, what are you doing coming to my house now?" It was obvious from Joshua's words that he was still very unhappy about being forbidden to go to the ducal residence. Lofi also knew Joshua had felt quite wronged, so she pitifully begged him to forgive her. And she explained that the person who had not allowed Joshua to come to the ducal residence was actually her father Damien. She had not known about it at all. If she had known earlier, things definitely would not have turned out like this. And the reason she had come to see Joshua now was because she missed him. However, Joshua had no intention of being coaxed over so easily by Lofi's explanation. Not until Lofi took something out, but Joshua wore a disdainful expression, as if hinting to Lofi, "I'm a dragon. Do you really think a mere gift can buy me over?" After hearing Joshua's words, Lofi's expression visibly dimmed a little. Then she picked up a glass bead. This is a communication stone. Its use is that people very far apart can still talk to each other. So it turned out that the communication stone Lofi had asked Veronica to buy for her back then was meant to be given to Joshua, because Joshua had complained to Lofi before that he was always the one coming to the ducal residence to play with her, while Lofi could not leave home. So with this communication stone, it would solve the problem of not being able to chat when they were apart. Lofi even felt a little proud of this idea of hers, but after hearing it, Joshua still kept a cold face. Then he said that he was a young dragon who had lived for hundreds of years, and there was nothing he had not seen. Could a mere communication stone really make him feel better? Unexpectedly, Joshua had misunderstood Lofi again. He thought that by giving him this gift now, Lofi was trying to cheer him up. Lofi quickly shook her head and explained that it was not like that. Rather, once they had this communication stone, she would not have to wait for Joshua to come to her anymore. In the future, she could also take the initiative to talk to Joshua. It was only because Damien had always been watching over her that she had no way to come find Joshua personally. Now that she was giving him the communication stone, in the end, it was simply because Joshua had always been on her mind. The anxious Lofi blurted all these words out at once, and by the time she realized it, her little face had already turned completely red. Just a second earlier, Joshua had still been looking down on Lofi's gift. He was even complaining that there was nothing in this world that could make him happy. But the very next second, he accepted the communication stone from Lofi with a face full of smiles. It turned out that it was only because Lofi had said one thing, that she missed Joshua very much. That single sentence made Joshua feel just how important he was in Lofi's heart. So he immediately smiled with joy. The misunderstanding between the two of them was finally completely resolved. It was rare for a good friend to come visit his home, and for a moment Joshua did not know what to bring out to entertain Lofi. But Joshua said there were no toys in his house at all, because he was a dragon and had absolutely no interest in toys. After hearing that, Lofi could only smile awkwardly. Indeed, Joshua was a dragon who had lived for hundreds of years. No matter how you put it, he could not possibly play with toys like a child. Then she said they could take out paper and crayons and draw to pass the time. And so the two of them sat closely together, holding crayons and drawing seriously. The setting sun streamed in through the window and fell upon them, as though covering the two with a thin golden veil. After Lofi finished drawing, Joshua took a look. It had to be said that Lofi's drawing was indeed amazing. I still couldn't tell who she had drawn no matter how I looked at it. But Joshua recognized the person in the drawing at a glance. "You actually know who I drew?" Joshua and Lofi finally cleared up their misunderstanding and made up again. The two, now reconciled, were sitting together drawing. At this moment, Lofi was the first to finish her picture, although it was only a few simple lines. Joshua still recognized at a glance that the person in the drawing was Veronica. Lofi confided to Joshua just how much she liked her. To outsiders, it looked as though her duty, like that of the other maids, was simply to take care of Luffy. But Veronica was the one who truly cared for Luffy, as if she were family. Unlike those other maids who said they liked Luffy to her face, but secretly spoke badly of her behind her back. Perhaps it was in Veronica that Luffy saw the shadow of what had once belonged to her mother. And perhaps she also longed to find in Veronica a support like a mother's love. As she spoke, the crayon in Luffy's hand unconsciously began to draw the image of her mother. Joshua stared at the woman in the drawing, Arlia, and knew that Luffy was missing her mother again. So he hesitantly asked Luffy whether she knew why she had been able to come out of the forest. After hearing this, Luffy stopped the crayon in her hand. She already knew all of this. This was also like the last thing her mother did for her before leaving this world. Through a magic circle, she had sent her to Papa Damien's side, so that the young Luffy would have someone to take care of her, not wanting Joshua to worry about her. Luffy said that although she missed her mother very much, she still had family by her side now, and Papa Damien was also taking care of her. But Joshua had always been alone. Didn't he have a father and mother or brothers and sisters by his side? Mother had left this world and gone to heaven. Before leaving, she entrusted her adorable daughter to Papa Damien. Luffy knew that her mother would never come back, and not a moment passed when she did not miss her mother in her heart. As a dragon, Joshua did not understand the family affection between humans. Seeing how much Luffy missed her mother, he directly told her to go find another one. Luffy said speechlessly that she absolutely would not, because no one could ever replace her mother in her heart. On the contrary, did Joshua see replacing one's mother as such an easy and casual thing when it came to his own family? Luffy was also very curious. Ever since she had known Joshua, he had always been alone, and she had never heard him mention any relatives, so she asked whether he had parents or siblings. Joshua explained that as a dragon, he was originally an independent being, and that was not the same concept as what humans called family. But he used to have an older brother, though now he could no longer see him. After hearing this, Luffy curiously pressed Joshua further. Since he had a brother, why had she never seen him? And where was his brother now? Joshua explained that in one's life, one could almost never have many chances to see dragons, and that naturally included himself as well. So Joshua and his older brother had only met once, which made Luffy feel it was very unbelievable, because when she was still very little, she had once seen a black dragon. At that time, her mother was with that black dragon, and Luffy had seen it with her own eyes. Perhaps that black dragon might have been Joshua's older brother. This was what Luffy looked like when she was little. At that time, she was simply unbearably adorable. Every day, she would cling to her mother and refuse to be apart from her. It was just a pity that she had not yet had enough time to enjoy that warm time with her mother. Before she knew it, she was forced to come to the ducal residence and live with her father. As for her mother's sudden disappearance, Luffy had always naively believed that her mother was only missing temporarily, that she simply could not be found for the time being. Whenever something upsetting happened, Luffy would miss her mother especially deeply. And when she was upset and restless, she would also have some rather bad dreams. In her dreams were all scenes from when Luffy had first come to the ducal residence as a child, showing her being humiliated and scolded by the maids. Luffy felt terrible inside. Even though she supposedly had a father by her side, he never seemed to stand up for his daughter. He only let Luffy cry sadly by herself. But in the dream, a very special maid appeared. Every time Luffy was bullied by the other maids, she would always appear in time and seize the chance again and again to help Luffy out of danger. But because so much time had passed, by now, Luffy could only vaguely remember her general outline, and she could not even remember her name, nor did she know how long the dream had gone on. In the early morning, the birdsong outside the window woke Luffy. The moment she opened her eyes, Luffy was still thinking about the maid who had appeared in the dream and what her name had been. While Luffy was still immersed in last night's dream, a maid came before her. At that very instant, Luffy finally remembered the maid who had once helped her. She hurriedly cried out, "Is your name Mary?" When Luffy was little, she was often bullied by the maids, but every single time, a blonde maid would step forward to help her. By the time Luffy wanted to repay her, that maid had already disappeared without a trace. At last, the longing that Luffy had always kept in her heart received an answer. Last night, she had even seen that blonde maid in her dream, and after waking up, she actually appeared before Luffy's eyes. Originally, Luffy still could not remember her name, but the moment she saw her, Luffy immediately cried out, "You're Mary." After being reunited after so long, the two told each other about how they had been over the years. While washing her little face, Luffy asked Mary why she had never appeared again all these years. Ever since the matter of the maids bullying Luffy had reached the Duke's ears, Damien at that time had been furious. He had never imagined that maids would dare bully his own daughter, so he decided to punish them severely. Thus, he ordered those maids who had bullied Luffy to be sent far away. Because Mary had belonged to the same group as those maids, she was implicated as well and was ultimately transferred away too. That was why Luffy had never been able to see Mary. Fortunately, today just happened to be Mary's day off, and the maid responsible for taking care of Luffy happened to be feeling unwell. So Mary came in her place to look after Lofi. Fate could be wonderfully strange sometimes. Seeing Lofi again, Mary was also very happy. After being separated from Lofi all these years, Mary had always heard news about her, and now Lofi was standing right before her. Seeing that she was doing well, Mary felt an indescribable sense of comfort in her heart. Perhaps in Mary's heart, she had always cared for Lofi as if she were her own little sister. And Lofi was equally happy to be reunited with Mary, who was like an older sister to her. "Would you be willing to stay by my side and take care of me?" Lofi almost blurted out these words to Mary. Among all the maids who had once bullied Lofi, Mary was the only one who had reached out a helping hand to her. Now, it was finally Lofi's turn to repay her properly. This sudden topic left Mary stunned for a moment, and she stood there blankly. She had never expected to meet Lofi again. But Mary did not answer for a long time, and instead Lofi mistakenly thought Mary disliked her, which was why she stayed silent. So Lofi asked in return whether there was something unlikable about her, and whether that was why Mary was unwilling to stay by her side. Hearing Lofi say this, Mary hurriedly shook her head and said it was nothing like that. How could anyone hate someone as adorable as Miss Lofi? There's hardly even enough time to like you. It was only because she had been too excited just now that she had forgotten to speak. She had simply not expected that Miss Lofi would still remember her even now. In that case, then stay here and be specifically responsible for taking care of me. After saying that, Lofi turned around and walked away in a dashing manner, leaving only Mary standing there, still immersed in the conversation from just now. The next day, because of the matter of Mary staying, Lofi happily shared this with Joshua. She took out the communication stone, and across the great distance, the two of them chatted happily back and forth. Joshua told Lofi that since she liked Mary and wanted to keep her by her side, then she would first have to rely on herself in this matter. At this moment, Joshua's voice grew softer and softer, and even Joshua's figure on the communication stone gradually disappeared from view. While Lofi was chatting with Joshua through the communication stone, the signal on Joshua's side suddenly cut off, and both the sound and image vanished. It turned out that the communication stone needed magical power to operate, but Lofi did not know this. That was only because Veronica, who had helped buy the communication stone before, had not told Lofi how to use it. And now she had gone on a business trip with Damien and was not by Lofi's side. Just as Lofi was worrying and did not know what to do, Mary, who was cleaning outside the door, caught Lofi's attention. So Lofi poked out her little head and quietly observed her. Then she walked straight up, took Mary's hand, and led her into the room. Mary thought Lofi had called for her because she wanted to order her to do something else. So she stood quietly at the side, waiting for Lofi to speak. But to her surprise, Lofi handed her a biscuit and wanted her to eat it together with her. Hearing this, Mary waved her hands in fright and said she could not accept it. After all, these biscuits had been personally made by the head cook for Lofi to eat. As a maid, of course, she could not share food with Lofi. Seeing that Mary refused to eat the biscuit she handed over, Lofi brought up how, when she had been bullied by the other maids as a child, it was Mary who had helped her and given her many biscuits. So this time, she wanted to treat it as her own way of repaying her. After hearing Lofi out, Mary finally realized that Lofi was actually such a kind little girl, so she happily accepted the cookies Lofi handed to her. Mary had just come out of Lofi's room when she was spotted by the other maids, with faces full of envy. They kept asking Mary why she was allowed to chat with Miss Lofi and why she was the only one brought into the room. In the past, everyone had only seen Lofi speak with Veronica and the butler, so why was she treating only Mary this way now? Ever since Lofi was bullied by the maids when she first arrived at the Duke's residence, she had never spoken another word to them. Veronica had always been the one to take care of her daily needs and meals. Even the room where she slept was off limits to the maids. And now, Mary's arrival had changed all of that. Lofi was not only willing to speak with her alone, but had even allowed her to enter the room by herself. When Mary was leaving, Lofi even gave her a box of her favorite cookies. Such special treatment left Mary at a bit of a loss. When the maids outside saw Mary come out of Miss Lofi's room, they all crowded around her enviously, curious about why Miss Lofi treated Mary so well. Everyone could not help but begin whispering among themselves when they learned that Lofi had become like this because she had been bullied by the previous maids when she was little, and that this was why she did not dare speak to the other maids now. The maids all began to feel sorry for Lofi. After hearing this, the green-haired maid was especially furious, loudly cursing those former maids for going too far. Mary took out the cookies Lofi had given her and shared them with everyone, also urging them not to be angry anymore. Mary had not expected that even though Lofi did not speak to the maids and would not let them enter her room, the current maids still liked Lofi all the same. If only one day Lofi could happily get along with everyone too. Meanwhile, Damien was in the palace speaking with the emperor. From the emperor's expression alone, it was clear that the matter Damien was reporting was extremely serious. So serious that even when he returned home and picked up Lofi, he still seemed absent-minded. Lofi called to him several times from his arms, but He did not respond, and Lofi, still unaware that something bad was about to happen, was smiling just as happily as ever, and she was growing fonder of her father too. Damien had gone away from home on a long trip, and today he had finally returned. Lofi had long been unable to wait to throw herself at Damien's side, happily sharing with him what had happened recently between her and the maid Mary. But compared with Lofi's radiant smile, Damien's face was full of worry, and his expression was nothing but unease. The invasion of the human world by magical beasts reminded him of Lofi's late mother. This time, he swore that he would protect Lofi no matter what and let her grow up safely and healthily. At the same time, an envelope on the table caught Lofi's attention. The moment Lofi reached out and touched it, the letter actually floated into the air. It turned out to be a messenger from the demon realm. It explained why it had come, hoping Damien would open the passage from the demon realm to the human world. After hearing the messenger's words, Lofi could not help but become worried. Her father Damien originally came from the demon realm. Would he abandon the empire for the sake of the demon realm? Damien answered decisively no. As long as his daughter Lofi remained in the empire, he would never betray it. But someone still needed to go to the demon realm to handle this matter. After saying that, he raised his hand and gently touched Lofi's head, telling her not to worry. And that person was Lofi's personal butler. Veronica knew why Damien had called her there. So she tested him by asking Damien that if war broke out again between the Empire and the demon realm, which side he would stand on. This time, Damien gave a different answer. If war really broke out, he would choose to stand on the demon realm side. The only one he could not let go of was Lofi. When Lofi was little, she had once read a book. The book recorded that a few years later, she would leave this world because of illness. As that time seemed to be drawing closer and closer, Lofi began to worry whether she would really die from disease. So she asked the butler to find a doctor to examine her. When the butler relayed these words to Damien, saying that Lofi needed a doctor, Damien's expression changed instantly. He thought Lofi had fallen ill and urgently needed to see a doctor. He hurried over in a panic, wanting to see what exactly was wrong with Lofi. When he arrived at Lofi's room, he saw her sitting quietly on the bed all by herself. When Lofi saw Damien come in, she even happily greeted him, but Damien anxiously pressed her, asking whether she felt unwell somewhere and whether that was why she wanted a doctor. Lofi had not expected that merely mentioning to the butler that she wanted a doctor would alarm Damien so directly. But she could not say now that it was because she had read that prophecy book and was worried she would not live long, which was why she especially wanted a doctor to examine her. So she could only change her words and say that she did not feel unwell, but simply wanted a checkup to prevent illness in advance. After hearing Lofi's words, Damien finally let out a sigh of relief, but after he walked out of the room, he became even more downcast because a human lifespan was limited to begin with. Sooner or later, the day would come when Lofi too would leave, and he could only watch helplessly, unable to do anything. Even such an adorable Lofi was being neglected. No matter how she called for her father, Damien would not even look at her, only saying that he was very busy before turning and leaving. Even when they ate together, he would not say a single word. Lofi wanted to enter his study, but she was directly turned away at the door. What had happened to the father, who once doted on his daughter so much? Even Veronica at the side felt that something was strange about his abnormal behavior. She could not bear to watch Lofi unhappy. So she went to ask Damien why he had been avoiding Miss Lofi these past few days. He had clearly been so gentle before, but now he seemed like a completely different person. After hearing this, Damien fell silent for a moment, then asked Veronica in return, "How many times have you experienced the departure of humans?" Veronica looked completely confused. She had grown up in the demon realm since childhood, with no human friends around her, so naturally, she could not understand the weight of Damien's words. Damien had already been in the human world for many years, and had personally experienced far too many human partings by life and death. Even those close to him had not been exceptions. That included Lofi's mother. Whenever he thought of what Lofi would look like after growing up, and then thought of how one day she too would leave his side, Damien felt incomparable pain, and that was why he had chosen now to avoid Lofi and keep himself from getting too close to her. Only in this way, when they truly had to part in the future, perhaps his heart would not hurt so much. Veronica did not agree with Damien's thinking. She felt that if that were really the case, then he should cherish the present even more and take good care of Lofi. Even if one day he truly had to say goodbye to Lofi, at least when he looked back on those happy moments they once had, it could make the pain of parting a little less. Can you imagine it? The round and chubby little Lofi as a child would grow into someone so beautiful and moving who would not want to have a daughter like that. And yet, Damien was troubled because of his most precious daughter, Lofi, because he had been cold and distant toward her recently. Young Lofi had become especially upset too, her little mouth pouting high and her little cheeks puffed up in anger. Even a cute pink dress could not suppress the anger in her heart. The maids were even hiding behind her, trembling with fear. Why did Mary have to be off today of all days? Now that Miss Lofi is angry, What should we do? The maids whispered among themselves, discussing what they could do to make Lofi a little happier. So someone suggested that perhaps they could take Lofi outside for a walk. After hearing that, Lofi also felt that she really should go out and get some fresh air. So the group went outside. The vivid roses in the flower beds quickly caught Lofi's attention. She could not help reaching out to pick one, because these flowers were gifts Damien had given to Lofi. Thinking back to the happy times they had spent together before, and then thinking of Damien's cold attitude toward her now, Lofi's eyes could not help but fill with tears, and she was almost about to cry. The maid behind her noticed that Lofi was in low spirits and quickly explained that His Grace had simply been too busy with work recently. Everyone had seen with their own eyes how much he used to dote on Lofi. Although the maids kept speaking up for Damien at her side, Lofi still remained gloomy, until a voice suddenly rang out. So this is where my precious daughter is. The person who said this was Damien, who had been neglecting Lofi all this time. What does it feel like to be neglected by your own father? At this moment, Lofi was aggrievedly complaining to the maids about Damien's coldness toward her. Faced with such an adorable Miss Lofi, the maids looked heartbroken and were all explaining things on the Duke's behalf. They said that Damien was probably just too busy with work. That was why he had neglected Miss Lofi for the moment. They also comforted Lofi, telling her not to be sad because of these things, and promised her that as long as they had a chance to leave the Duke's residence in the future, whatever Miss Lofi wanted, they could secretly buy it and bring it back to her. With the maid's doting care, Lofi finally forgot for the moment the disappointment of being neglected by Damien, and in the blink of an eye she showed a happy smile again. But just as everyone was still immersed in this joy, Damien suddenly came looking for her. Lofi immediately ran up to him on her little short legs. She had not expected Damien to come looking for her on his own initiative. It turned out to be because last time Lofi had said she wanted a doctor to examine her. This time, Damien had really brought the doctor. Greetings, young lady of the ducal house. The physician bowed respectfully to Lofi. But when Lofi looked at him, she could not help feeling a trace of fear in her heart. As the physician began examining her, Lofi could not help but start thinking, if things were really going to develop the way they had in the book, then had signs already begun appearing in her body now? Lofi could barely suppress her nervous heartbeat and could only wait for the physician to give his final diagnosis. Even the butler standing to the side had an unusually grave expression. Well, how exactly is Miss Lofi's condition? When Lofi was little, she had learned from that book that a few years later she would be plagued by illness and eventually leave this world. And now, after several years had already passed, the thing she feared most seemed finally to have arrived before her eyes. After the physician finished examining her, his diagnosis was that she was in very good health, with only a slight chill in her body. Hearing that nothing was wrong with Lofi, Damien turned around and left. There was none of the gentle tenderness he used to have when doting on his daughter, and the only one unwilling to believe that she was truly healthy was Lofi. She asked the physician again whether she would die in 5 years and leave this world because of the chill in her body. The physician could not help laughing after hearing this. It was the first time he had ever heard someone say such a thing. He then quickly explained to Lofi that such a slight chill could not possibly lead to that kind of result, and assured her that such a thing would absolutely not happen. With the physician's assurance, the heart Lofi had kept hanging in suspense finally slowly settled down. She let out a long sigh of relief, glad that the contents of that book had turned out to be false. Now, the issue of her physical health was considered resolved. But in Lofi's heart, she still had not truly relaxed because her father Damien was still neglecting her just as before. A few days later, the maids were sitting under a tree chatting with Lofi. At this moment, Lofi's face was full of worry, and she was still troubled by the matter of her father Damien. A faint smile suddenly appeared at the corners of her mouth, and then she abruptly stood up. She ran forward in large strides, and from that running figure, it seemed she had already found the answer she wanted. She took the initiative to go to Damien's study and waited for him to come back, wanting to ask him personally for the reason behind all of this. Why was he neglecting her, distancing himself from her, and even no longer speaking to her? As Damien walked into the study, Lofi spoke first. "Daddy, you're here." When Damien saw Lofi sitting on his desk, he looked surprised at first, then asked her how she had come running to the study all by herself. Lofi could tell that her sudden appearance really had startled Damien, so she asked in return, "Doesn't Daddy have anything he wants to say to Lofi?" But after hearing that, Damien still pretended not to understand and said he did not know what Lofi was talking about. Lofi immediately grew a little angry, puffing up her cheeks and continuing to press him, determined to get an answer no matter what. But Damien merely brushed it aside with words like, "You're still too young. You wouldn't understand." Lofi clenched her little hands and finally said the words that had been weighing on her heart for a long time. "Daddy, do you hate me?" The moment she said this, Lofi closed her eyes. She did not dare look at Damien's expression, and she was even more afraid of hearing the answer she least wanted to hear. She did not want to go back to those early days when she and Damien had been like strangers to each other. With nervous unease in her heart, Lofi remained silently trapped alone in her own world, until Damien said one sentence, quite the opposite. But Lofi still did not understand. If Damien liked her, then why had he kept avoiding her? Faced with Lofi's step-by-step questioning, Damien still did not have the courage to raise his head and look at her even once more, and admitted that he was just a coward with no courage to face the departure of the one he loved. Luffy encouraged Damien, saying that if he really was a coward, then she would be the one responsible for being brave for both of them. Who could have imagined that such words would come from little Luffy's mouth? It showed even more clearly how strong her heart truly was. But in contrast, timid and hesitant Damien was still so afraid that he could not say a single word until Luffy turned around and left in anger. Luffy leaned weakly against the door, angry that her father Damien was such a coward. She had finally managed to say everything she wanted to say, yet he still refused to come closer to her. Thinking of this made her feel even worse inside. And in the end, this matter also reached Joshua's ears.